Outside under the bright night sky, soldiers stand guard around the campfires as the moon shines down on the military camp. Inside one of the dim tents, a solitary warrior dressed in black armor sits quietly in the candlelight, carefully polishing his sword. For him, this blade isn't just a simple weapon, but the ultimate physical proof of the unwavering loyalty he holds toward his master. Having pledged his allegiance directly to Lord Atlas, his entire reason for living is bound entirely to serving through this single sword. The young man solemnly fixates on the steel, knowing full well the heavy burden and duty he carries on his shoulders. Suddenly, the tent curtain is pulled aside as a stern voice snaps him out of his thoughts, calling out the name Zeno. Without hesitation, Zeno gets to his feet and immediately bows his head in absolute respect toward his commander. Standing before him is Lord Atlas himself, an imposing veteran general clad in massive silver armor and a flowing red cape. Atlas coldly delivers his orders, stating that they deploy at dawn and commanding Zeno to spearhead the vanguard right through the enemy's center. He explicitly demands that Zeno return with the head of the enemy General Garzas, all for the ultimate glory of the House of Arclight. As the Lord turns to leave, he issues one final stern warning not to fail him, leaving Zeno kneeling with a burning glare. Memories of the past flood Zeno's mind, remembering that freezing snowy day when Lord Atlas first rescued him from dying. Back then, he was nothing more than an abandoned child on the verge of death, until Atlas took him in and gave his empty life meaning. That single act of mercy saved him, igniting a fierce spark of devotion within the young boy's desperate heart. From that moment on, Zeno vowed that his entire life and body belonged solely to the man who saved him. Returning to the present, Zeno opens his eyes with absolute, unshakable determination to execute his master's will. He answers back with total obedience, promising to carry out the dangerous mission exactly as commanded. Lord Atlas then steps outside back into the night camp, leaving his most loyal weapon alone to prepare for the bloodshed ahead. With his orders set, Zeno grips his blade tightly, fully prepared to throw himself directly into the upcoming battle. When dawn arrives, Zeno charges onto the battlefield like a demon, cleanly slicing through enemy soldiers in a frenzy of blood and steel. He moves like a whirlwind of death, effortlessly tearing apart enemy defenses and spraying blood across the dirt. With cold, ruthless eyes, he doesn't pause for a second, cutting down anyone dumb enough to step into his range. Within moments, the ground around him is littered with fallen bodies as he stands amidst the carnage completely unscathed. But before he can take a breath, heavy thundering footsteps shake the earth as an enemy cavalry unit charges straight toward him. Facing a massive wall of armored war horses charging at full speed, our MC stands completely alone, unfazed by the terrifying horde. The lead enemy cavalryman grins maniacally, fully believing they're about to trample the solitary warrior into dust. Deep down, Zeno knows that everything he has pushed his body to achieve was done entirely to bring victory to the House of Arclight. He spent countless years vomiting blood and pushing past his physical limits just to forge his body into a lethal weapon. He literally carved away his own soul to perfect a forbidden sword technique fueled purely by his unyielding loyalty. Dropping into a low posture right in front of the oncoming horses, he condenses all his magical energy into a single lethal point. A dark smirk appears on his face as he unleashes his signature secret technique, Phantom Shadow. In an instant, a ghost-like wave of dark energy erupts, cutting right through space and splitting the charging cavalry cleanly in half. Blood sprays high into the air as the massive cavalry charge is completely annihilated in a single, devastating strike. Watching from a safe distance, the other Arclight soldiers look on in sheer disgust, calling his terrifying sword style the work of a low-born monster. However, the immense recoil of the forbidden technique immediately takes its toll, causing Zeno to violently vomit a massive amount of blood. As he kneels weakly on the ground bleeding, his own allies insult him behind his back, warning each other not to get near low-born filth like him. Zeno can barely catch his breath, sweating heavily as another alarming sound starts vibrating through the ground. Pushing through the sheer physical agony, he looks up into the distance only for his expression to turn completely grim. To his horror, a fresh second wave of enemy cavalry comes rushing down the field, taking advantage of his weakened state. Realizing how terrible his situation is, Zeno glances back toward the cliff where Lord Atlas is silently watching the battle unfold. Looking down at his trembling sword, he calculates that his broken body can only handle performing one final Phantom Shadow attack. Even though using it again might permanently ruin his body, Zeno turns his head up toward his master on the hill. Up on the high ground, Lord Atlas sits calmly on his heavy warhorse, staring down at Zeno without a shred of pity. The general's expression remains completely cold and demanding, expecting nothing less than absolute sacrifice from his servant. Seeing that unwavering look from the man he owes his life to, Zeno tightly grits his teeth and accepts his cruel fate. Whispering his master's command once more, he firmly plants his foot into the dirt and readies himself for one last reckless stand. Even if this final attack completely burns out his life force, Zeno is fully prepared to throw his life away without regret. Up on the cliff, Atlas watches on with a sinister silence, treating his most loyal knight as nothing more than an expendable tool. Screaming inside that it is all for Lord Atlas, Zeno explodes forward into a desperate, monstrous strike right into the enemy ranks. Seeing Zeno pushed beyond his breaking point, Lord Atlas narrows his eyes in cold calculation, revealing that everything is going according to his sinister plan. As Zeno charges forward to strike, a mysterious golden light suddenly begins leaking out from his body during the attack. Watching from the cliff, Lord Atlas raises his hand to signal his mages, deciding it is time to put an end to his tool before he grows out of control. On his master's order, the hooded mages immediately activate a dark purple magic talisman to trigger their trap. In an instant, a sinister spell reaction erupts beneath Zeno on the battlefield. Dark purple chains surge from the earth, surrounding our MC in a binding array that completely freezes his movements. Trapped inside the dark magic, Zeno screams in sheer agony and confusion, unable to understand why his own allies are attacking him. The dark purple seal constricts tightly around his flesh, forcibly suppressing the golden energy inside his body. The intense magical pressure causes Zeno to violently cough up blood as his power collapses under the strain. Overwhelmed by unbearable pain and paralysis, his vision blurs as agonizing screams echo through his mind. Taking advantage of his helpless state, the enemy axe-wielding warrior steps up with a sadistic grin. Standing over the paralyzed knight, the enemy raider raises his heavy battle axe high into the air and calls him a monster. With a brutal swing, the axe chops straight through Zeno's arm, severing it completely in a horrific spray of blood. Laughing hysterically over the bleeding warrior, the enemy reveals that he was simply fulfilling a deal made directly with Zeno's master. Lying broken in his own blood, Zeno's mind completely shatters as he realizes Lord Atlas was the one who orchestrated his execution. Heavy armored footsteps begin echoing across the dirt, slowly approaching his mutilated body. Through his fading consciousness, he looks up to see a tall, heavily armored figure standing right above him. Looking down at his dying subordinate between his legs, Lord Atlas coldly calls out Zeno's name. Staring up with wide, bloodshot red eyes, Zeno can barely comprehend the betrayal of the man he trusted most. Without a single trace of emotion, Lord Atlas casually informs him that his role as a weapon ends right here. Coughing up blood through a desperate, heartbroken smile, Zeno weakly asks why his master would betray him like this. Grasping the dirt with his remaining hand, he tremblingly calls Lord Atlas's father, begging for an answer. Atlas glares down with cold, vicious eyes, harshly warning the dying orphan never to mistake their relationship. He bluntly reveals that he has never once viewed Zeno as his son throughout his entire life. Tears of blood fall from Zeno's eyes into the red pool below, as those cruel words crush whatever was left of his heart. Atlas explains that back on that snowy day years ago, he looked into Zeno's dead eyes and immediately recognized his potential. He saw a broken child freezing to death in the snow, completely abandoned by the world. To the ruthless lord, the boy was never a person, but rather a perfect empty shell that could be molded into a fine tool. By giving him a fake reason to live, Atlas knew the boy would display the absolute dog-like loyalty of a faithful beast. Zeno was nothing more than a convenient, disposable sword forged to handle the House of Arclight's dirtiest battles. However, Atlas admits that for a simple tool, Zeno ended up being a bit too well, made for his own good. Since childhood, Zeno possessed an abnormally terrifying amount of spiritual energy dormant within his body. Atlas secretly fed him special green suppression poisons for years, doing everything in his power to keep that monstrous power hidden. He forced young Zeno to drink the suppressant under the guise of medicine, keeping his true latent potential locked away. But seeing the golden light overflow during today's battle proved to Atlas that the suppression poison had finally reached its limit. Believing it was only a matter of time before Zeno turned his monstrous strength against him, Atlas decided to eliminate him now, while Zeno desperately cries out that he would never dream of betraying his lord. Reaching out with his one remaining bloody hand, Zeno screams in total agony that he would never betray the man who saved him. He violently vomits another mouthful of blood as he pushes his mangled body beyond its absolute limit just to plead his innocence. Annoyed by his pathetic begging, Lord Atlas coldly tells him to be quiet before deciding to reveal the true meaning of his name. Standing beside the enemy warrior, Atlas reveals that in the House of Arclight, the name Zeno literally translates to disposable sword. As those horrifying words sink in, Atlas and all the surrounding soldiers burst into loud, cruel laughter, mocking the dying warrior. His body completely gives out, his legs slumping onto the blood-soaked soil as his life quickly drains away. Resting his bloody face against the cold earth, Zeno's consciousness slowly begins to fade into eternal darkness. Lying in a pool of his own blood next to his sword, he bitterly reflects on his entire wasted existence. He gave up his childhood, his body, and his very soul, dedicating everything to a man who saw him as nothing more than trash. His severed arm sits abandoned nearby on the dirt, a gruesome symbol of his ultimate betrayal. But just as the enemy soldier turns away, he suddenly gasps in shock as something impossible happens on the ground. Refusing to die quietly, Zeno uses his remaining strength to bite down on his sword's hilt with his bare teeth, desperately trying to trigger Phantom Shadow. Golden divine light surges through his bloody eyes as he attempts one final, suicidal strike with his teeth. However, the extreme damage to his body is far too severe, and his vision quickly fades into total darkness. With a quiet thud, Zeno's head collapses in the puddle of blood, his lifeless body falling still beside his broken sword. Seeing Zeno collapse motionless into the dirt, the enemy warrior bursts out laughing, admitting that Zeno's desperate final stunt actually scared him for a second. Calling him a stupid monster, the enemy steps back as Zeno's fading soul reflects on how his first reason to live was nothing more than a lie. Realizing he was created solely to be used as a brainwashed weapon, Zeno hears the enemy mockingly tell him to die already as darkness takes him. On the bloody battlefield, his lifeless body lies abandoned, treated as nothing more than a broken tool thrown away after serving its purpose. As Lord Atlas casually walks away from his corpse, Zenoing thoughts wonder what he spent his entire wasted life fighting for. But suddenly, instead of cold darkness, a strange, soothing warmth washes over his spirit, making him realize he has been reborn into the Elminster family, the continent's legendary magic clan. Slowly regaining consciousness, he feels a soft, gentle hand touching him as a warm voice greets him. Opening his eyes, he looks up to see a stunning blonde noblewoman with golden eyes smiling down at him, lovingly calling him her sweet little baby. RMC's mind immediately short-circuits in sheer shock as he realizes he has been reincarnated as an infant. Sweat dripping down his tiny face, he stares in utter disbelief at his new surroundings. Looking down at his chubby baby hands, he nearly loses his mind trying to process his ridiculous new reality. Now reborn as little Lucius, the former deadly knight panics uncontrollably while his gorgeous new mother gently cradles him in her arms. He remembers that the Empire is split between two rival powers, the House of Arclight, which praises the sword above all else, and the Elminster family, a grand house of archmages that regards magic as the supreme power of the world. Legend says the founder of the Elminster clan once created an entire continent with a single spell chant and possessed spiritual energy rivaling the sun itself. Finding the situation deeply ironic, our MC realizes that after dedicating his entire past life to the sword, he has been reborn into the ultimate magic family. As he rests his tiny head, he suddenly senses a massive, dormant core of spiritual energy stirring deep inside his infant chest. Opening his golden eyes in shock, a wave of familiar, overwhelming energy surges through his body. He immediately recognizes this incredible sensation rushing through his veins. It is an endless, roaring ocean of spiritual energy overflowing from within his new soul. He realizes this is the true, unimaginable magical potential that Lord Atlas had spent years suppressing with poison during his previous life. A dark, wicked smirk forms on the baby's face as he understands that the heavens have given him a second chance. Reborn with the noble bloodline of the continent's greatest magic family, he now has the ultimate environment to grow. Armed with unlimited spiritual energy and his past life's lethal combat experience, he vows to use every single resource at his disposal to destroy the House of Arclight and exact brutal revenge on Lord Atlas for his betrayal. But to pull off his grand revenge plan, little Lucius decides his first priority is to seize complete control over the Elminster family's power. However, his scheming thought process is immediately derailed when servants surround him with sparkling golden rattles and glowing luxury drinks. An entire army of maids and chefs lines up in the grand hall, competing with each other just to pamper the young lord. The mansion's head chef presents a silver tray with a glowing jar, proudly announcing that he prepared a special baby meal just for Lord Lucius. He excitedly reveals that the drink was made using sacred sap harvested directly from the mythical world tree. Sweat drips down Lucius' face in second-hand embarrassment as the chef tries to spoon-feed him like a normal infant. Before he can react, the red-haired headmaid shoves the chef out of the way, showing off a golden rattle that all the maids spent the night infusing with magic. She proudly explains that every maid in the estate gathered together in a grand ritual just to pour their spiritual energy into his new toy. As the chef and maid begin glaring at each other in a fierce battle of pampering, baby Lucius sits between them completely dumbfounded. Hiding behind his mother's robe, Lucius narrows his eyes in deep suspicion at all this sudden adoration. His mother gently steps in to calm the overzealous servants, chuckling that they are going to overwhelm her precious little Lucius. She smiles softly at her baby, tenderly stroking his golden hair with genuine warmth. Feeling her touch, Lucius mentally reminds himself not to get attached or fall for their sweet act. Haunted by memories of how Lord Atlas discarded him, he guards his heart against any form of affection. He convinces himself that all this fake love and pampering is simply because the Elminster family wants to exploit his incredible magical potential. Having learned the brutal reality of the world in his past life, he refuses to let his guard down ever again. When the maids erupt in wild cheers just because he rolls over on his bed, Lucius vows to ruthlessly exploit the spoiled lifestyle solely for his revenge. A week passes in the luxurious Elminster castle, and during those few days, the former veteran knight comes to a startling realization. Sitting up on his massive bed late at night with his baby bottle, Lucius realizes just how absurdly powerful his new family really is. He discovers that the Elminster family's magical methods and insane wealth far exceed anything he ever imagined in his past life. Even his daily baby milk is personally brewed in magic cauldrons by top-tier mages, packing a massive boost of spiritual energy into every single bottle. The maids literally exhaust their own mana supplies every single morning just to prepare his high-density magical baby formula. On top of that, the lullabies his mother sings to put him to sleep are actually high-level incantation formulas designed to naturally teach him spell casting. Whenever he crawls around the bed, the maids eagerly present him with rare spell scrolls to stimulate his magical intellect. Holding his milk bottle, Lucius admits that while acting like a helpless baby is embarrassing, this insane training environment is absolute perfection for his growth. Deciding that he cannot wait any longer, little Lucius reaches out his tiny hand, eager to test the true extent of his current magic power. He recalls that the true essence of his past life's phantom shadow technique lies in compressing all available energy into a single concentrated point. Just like he used to channel aura into his trusted sword during his previous life, he plans to apply the exact same principle to his new spiritual energy. Focusing with absolute concentration, the infant warrior attempts to bring every single drop of his overflowing mana under perfect control. Gritting his teeth with intense focus, his tiny body glows bright blue as he forcefully compresses his massive magic store. Suddenly, his power erupts out of control, shooting a blinding pillar of light straight through the ceiling of his room. A massive beam of celestial energy blasts high into the night sky above the Elminster castle, illuminating the entire territory. The violent shockwave reverberates throughout the entire estate, causing the chef in the kitchen to drop his knife in terror. Down the hall, his mother and the red-haired maid gasp in shock as the sudden surge of magic shakes the foundation of the mansion. High above the city, the beam bursts into a dazzling star of magical energy that can be seen for miles around. Back on his bed, little Lucius collapses onto his pillow, completely drained from realizing how drastically his energy grew in just 1 week. Panting heavily, he stares up in awe at the sheer scale of his magic, thrilled by the unbelievable power sleeping inside him. Exhausted from the attempt, he slowly closes his eyes, knowing that mastering this insane strength will be the key to his future. Moments later, footsteps thunder down the hallway as his mother and the maid rush toward his room in total panic. Throwing the doors open, his mother frantically shouts his name, worried sick after hearing the massive explosion. But when they step inside, the entire room is completely quiet and peaceful. Seeing little Lucius sleeping soundly on his pillow, the mother sighs in relief, assuming the loud noise was just her imagination. Sitting by his bed, she smiles tenderly at her sleeping baby, softly wondering what kind of sweet dreams he is having. The next morning, sunlight fills the estate as the mother peacefully rocks little Lucius in her arms. Suddenly, the double doors slam open as Fran, the red-haired maid, bursts into the room in a state of absolute panic. Sweating nervously, Fran screams that terrible news has just reached the castle regarding the royal empire. Holding Lucius in his milk bottle, the mother remains composed, calmly telling Fran to settle down and explain what happened. Fran frantically explains that a high-ranking delegation escorted by the royal guard has just arrived at their gates, led by an official imperial appraiser. Hearing the word appraiser, little Lucius immediately perks up, narrowing his eyes as he senses trouble brewing. The mother grows deeply anxious, wondering why imperial officials would visit such a remote region without prior notice while the head of the family is away. Lucius quickly realizes the truth, understanding that the Empire's detection network must have picked up his magical beam from the night before. A short while later, all the mansion's servants gather in the grand hall, standing in tense silence alongside the mother and baby. Cradling Lucius close to her chest, the mother tries to maintain her composure as heavy footsteps approach the doors. The grand doors swing open, revealing a mysterious hooded appraiser flanked by imposing imperial guards exuding a dark aura. The entire room holds its breath as the intimidating delegation slowly marches toward the center of the hall. The sharp clack of high-heeled boots echoes off the marble floor as the hooded appraiser approaches Lady Elminster. Cradling her baby tightly, the mother glares nervously at the uninvited imperial guests standing before her. Addressing her with cold authority, the hooded official greets Lady Elminster without showing a hint of respect. The appraiser bluntly states that there is no time for pleasantries, revealing that they have come bearing a direct imperial decree. Unveiling a piercing blue eye beneath the dark hood, the appraiser reveals that the Empire's surveillance network detected a massive anomaly last night. The official describes how an unprecedented torrent of spiritual energy erupted from their territory, a once-in-a-millennium anomaly that alarmed the capital. Raising a long, clawed hand, the appraiser declares that the source of that overwhelming magic has been traced directly to this estate. Standing in the middle of the hall, the official demands to know what kind of entity is hiding within the Elminster family grounds. Glaring at the nervous servants, the appraiser mutters in frustration, trying to locate where such immense power could possibly be coming from. The official grimly warns that if their assessment reveals the magic source to be a potential threat to the Empire, then under imperial law, they are authorized to immediately carry out a complete purification to destroy the threat. Hearing the word purification, Fran and the other maids gasp in horror, knowing it means execution for anyone deemed dangerous. The appraiser coldly asserts that enforcing this brutal law is their absolute duty to the crown. Reaching into the dark robe, the official pulls out a delicate, glowing golden glass orb known as an appraisal device. Raising the magical orb high, the appraiser activates the artifact to scan everyone standing inside the grand hall. As the internal gears click and spin, the official senses that the massive energy source is definitely present in the room. The magical glass sphere rattles intensely as it locks onto the mysterious magic signature. Suddenly, the artifact glows with intense light as a concentrated beam of magic shoots out from the center of the orb. To everyone's utter shock, the detection beam cuts straight through the air and points directly at Lady Elminster and baby Lucius. Staring coldly at the mother cradling her child, the appraiser softly calls out Lady Elminster's name as the orb locks onto her baby. The hooded official politely requests Lady Elminster to step forward so the appraisal device can scan her body directly. Complying without resistance, the noblewoman nods calmly and prepares to step out into the center of the hall. Handing baby Lucius over to one of her trusted maids, she softly reassures her household that everything will be fine. Stepping up to the official alone, Lady Elminster stands quietly as the appraiser begins the scanning process. The appraiser holds up the golden glass orb, causing it to swirl with light as it measures her spiritual presence. However, to the official's sheer surprise, the artifact remains relatively stable, proving she is not the source of the anomaly. Glaring beneath the dark hood, the appraiser mutters in confusion, wondering where that monstrous magic power could be hiding. Suddenly, the orb in the official's hand violently reacts, bursting with a blinding golden glare. Spinning out of control, the artifact's internal gears click loudly as it locks onto a new target inside the room. A concentrated beam of golden light shoots straight across the grand hall, bypassing every adult in its path. The detection beam lands dead center on little Lucius, who is sitting quietly in the arms of the maid. Whipping around in total disbelief, the appraiser stares wide-eyed at the tiny child. Cold sweat drips down the official's face upon realizing that an infant possessed such terrifying power. Under the sheer weight of Lucius's spiritual aura, fine cracks immediately begin spreading across the sacred orb. With a violent pop, the golden glass artifact shatters into pieces right in the appraiser's hand. Shards of glass float through the air as Lucius watches calmly without blinking an eye. Panicking in complete terror, the appraiser gasps aloud, unable to believe that a baby could be the monster they were hunting. The surrounding servants and Lady Elminster stare in absolute shock, horrified by the artifact's sudden destruction. Glaring back with piercing golden eyes, our MC quietly maintains his composure despite being exposed. The appraiser screams that this is impossible, terrified by what just transpired before his eyes. Backing away in disbelief, the official notes that a sacred treasure indestructible to first-class mages just shattered from pure spiritual pressure alone. Unfazed by the commotion, little Lucius looks down at the official with cold, calculating eyes. Refusing to leave empty-handed, the appraiser decides to forcibly connect his soul directly to the infant to inspect his true nature. Activating complex magic circles on the floor, the official projects his spiritual awareness straight into Lucius's mindscape. But the moment his spell touches the baby, a violent surge of blue lightning shocks his hand with agonizing pain. Gasps of pain escape the appraiser's throat as the overwhelming feedback nearly burns his spiritual connection to ash. Entering Lucius's inner soul realm, the official is immediately met with a sight that defies all human logic. Instead of a normal mindscape, a roaring ocean of golden infernal energy engulfs his entire vision, completely obscuring the core of the soul. The sheer density of Lucius's spiritual energy feels like staring directly into the burning face of the sun. But deep within that golden sun, the appraiser catches a glimpse of a dark, ominous abyssal flame flickering at its core. Snapping back to reality in a cold sweat, the appraiser trembles as Lady Elminster anxiously asks what he saw inside her son's soul. Standing beside Maid Fran, the noble mother waits with a heavy heart for the imperial verdict. With a grim, ominous expression, the appraiser reveals the dark secret behind the imperial family's secret duties. He explains that since the dawn of the empire, appraisers have been tasked with monitoring an ancient book of prophecy. Opening that ancient tome reveals a terrifying foretelling regarding the empire's ultimate doom. The prophecy speaks of a cursed soul harboring the abyss within a sacred light, foretelling an entity that will eventually bring calamity and sink the empire into darkness. Looking directly at Lucius, the appraiser declares that the state of her infant son's soul perfectly matches the forbidden prophecy. Hearing those damning words, Lady Elminster and Fran gasp in horror, completely unable to accept the official's claim. The appraiser coldly announces that by the absolute authority of the imperial crown, this dangerous curse must be eliminated. Ordering his royal guards forward, the official vows to nip the threat in the bud before it can ever grow to destroy the empire. As the dark-clad guards approach, the estate servants step forward with shadowed, resolute faces, ready to protect their young master. Realizing a fight is imminent, little Lucius narrows his eyes, quietly preparing to defend himself. Tucked behind the maid's back, the infant quietly gathers blue spiritual energy into his tiny palm, ready to unleash a spell if needed. The lead imperial guard slowly grips his hilt, pulling his steel sword from its scabbard with a lethal clank. But before the guards can take another step, Lady Elminster firmly commands him to stop. Suddenly, glowing pink feathers of high-density mana begin drifting softly throughout the grand hall. Unleashing her true power, Lady Elminster manifests a massive, dazzling wing of pink magical energy behind her back, declaring that no one will touch her child. Standing as an archmage of the Elminster clan, her golden eyes flare with fierce, terrifying motherly resolve. The appraiser glares back grimly, asking if she truly intends to commit high treason by defying the laws of the empire. Looking down at the imperial squad with unshakable authority, the mother declares that a single tear from her child carries far more weight than the entire empire's laws. Standing firm with unwavering resolve, Lady Celestia proudly proclaims that putting her child before all else is the true meaning of being a mother. Watching from the maid's arms, little Lucy stares wide-eyed in absolute disbelief, shocked by the overwhelming love his new mother holds for him. Glaring through the swirling magical pressure, the appraiser grimly asks if she is truly prepared to face the dire consequences of defying the crown. The tension in the grand hall reaches its absolute peak as Lady Celestia's radiant wings clash against the appraiser's dark aura. Despite facing the full authority of the empire, Celestia doesn't flinch for a second, standing as an impenetrable wall between the guards and her baby. Sensing her unyielding determination, the appraiser slowly powers down his spell, allowing the crackling lightning around his hands to fade away. Shocked by his sudden hesitation, the imperial guards glance at their leader in complete confusion. One of the guards frantically questions the appraiser, asking if he seriously intends to turn a blind eye to such a dangerous anomaly. Staring silently at the floor, the appraiser solemnly reflects on the true purpose behind the empire's strict laws. He mutters that while the law demands them to eliminate potential threats, a child raised surrounded by such pure love might not actually become a calamity after all. As Celestia's pink wings gently dissolve into soft light, the official turns his back on his own guards to address the mother. Looking over at the maid-cradling Lucius, the appraiser admits that he wants to personally witness how this child grows up. Stepping closer, the official locks eyes with the infant, fascinated by the quiet intelligence hidden behind those golden eyes. Addressing her as Lady Celestia, daughter of the Duke, he acknowledges that she is fully willing to rebel against the empire for her son's sake. Impressed by her absolute devotion, he realizes that a mother willing to risk everything for her child changes everything. Closing his eyes with a subtle smirk, the appraiser makes a shocking choice, announcing that he will join her in protecting the boy. Taken aback by his sudden change of heart, Lady Celestia sweats nervously in utter surprise. Turning to leave, the official sternly adds that if Lucius ever strays from the right path and turns evil, both he and Celestia will share the blame and punishment. Walking toward the exit flanked by his guards, he asks if she understands the heavy weight of their new pact. Glancing back one last time as the massive doors slowly close, the appraiser warns her never to forget the promise they made today. With a heavy thud, the grand doors slam shut, leaving the estate hall in quiet tranquility. Standing alone in the middle of the room, Celestia remains motionless for a moment as the adrenaline finally wears off. Her body begins to tremble as the sheer weight of what almost happened finally crashes down on her. The sharp click of her heels rings across the marble floor as she frantically rushes over to her baby. Snatching Lucius back into her arms from the maid, she clutches him tightly against her chest. Cupping her baby's chubby cheeks, she weeps softly, repeatedly whispering how grateful she is that he is safe. Feeling her warm, trembling hands on his face, Lucius remains completely frozen in shock. Overcome by relief, Celestia collapses to her knees on the floor, weeping uncontrollably while Fran kneels beside her to offer support. Tears stream down the noblewoman's face as she lets out all the terror she had been bottling up during the confrontation. She buries her face in Lucius's neck, holding him as if he were the most precious treasure in the entire world. Resting his head against her shoulder, our cold MC feels a sudden warmth melt the icy walls around his heart, realizing her love is genuine. Meanwhile, inside a royal carriage traveling back to the capital, a guard anxiously asks the appraiser if letting the child live was really acceptable. Smirking thoughtfully, the appraiser orders the guard to report to His Majesty that they discovered an extraordinary talent who will greatly benefit the nation. 12 years quickly pass after that fateful day, revealing a massive underground training chamber where floating platforms hover beneath glowing spell circles. Now a handsome 12-year-old boy, Lucius stands in the center of the arena with his eyes closed as lethal magic spears rain down on him. Moving with superhuman speed, the young genius effortlessly deflects the incoming projectiles using swirling arcs of wind magic. Balancing on the suspended platform, he dodges a relentless barrage of spells, mentally pushing himself to absorb even more power. Lucius reflects that by forcing his mind into extreme life or death tension during training, his past combat instincts merge perfectly with his new mana. He knows that the closer he pushes his body to the brink of death, the sharper his focus becomes. Landing cleanly on the wobbling wooden disc, his footwork remains flawlessly balanced despite the intense height. Channeling crackling lightning between his fingers, he notes that every near-death experience allows him to refine his magic into a higher form. As the automated spell circles slowly fade away, the young prodigy relaxes his stance and takes a steadying breath. Wiping the sweat from his forehead, Lucius sits down on the edge of the floating platform to catch his breath. From the observation deck far below, his mother Celeste calls out his name, watching her son's insane routine with deep concern. Clasping her hands anxiously, Celestia scolds him softly, worried that he is pushing himself through such reckless death, defying training again. Hearing her voice from high above, Lucius stands up on the suspended platform and looks down at the ground. Offering a reassuring smile, the young lord gently calls back, telling his mother not to worry because he is completely fine. Without an ounce of fear, he casually steps off the edge of the high platform, reminding her that he has been practicing this every day for 12 years. Seeing her son plunge toward the stone floor from such a terrifying height, Celestia and maid Fran gasp in total horror. But right before hitting the ground, Lucius smoothly manifests a pillow of swirling wind magic beneath his feet, landing as gracefully as a feather. Stepping lightly onto the stone floor, Lucius finishes his dangerous descent right in front of his mother and maid Fran. Looking back at them, the young prodigy flashes a proud, confident smirk, fully aware of his mastery over magic. Instantly losing her temper, Fran transforms into an angry chibi form, screaming at him never to get arrogant because overconfidence leads to death. Lucius simply chuckles and nods along, used to the red-haired maid's dramatic lectures after 12 long years. A close-up profile reveals how much he has matured over the past 12 years, quietly preparing for his ultimate goal. Shifting to a serious tone, Fran calls out to her young master, announcing that the moment they have all been waiting for has finally arrived. She respectfully holds out an official white envelope sealed with green wax, surrounded by an aura of importance. Reaching forward, Lucius carefully accepts the sealed letter into his hands. Unfolding the document, his bright golden eyes shine with intense anticipation behind the paper. A dark, vengeful smile creeps on his face, knowing he has trained his whole new life specifically for this day. The document is a formal invitation to the Royal Academy selection ceremony, where the most elite young talents in the Empire gather. Lore records show that whoever graduates as the top student of this legendary academy is granted a special privilege. That top graduate receives a divine blessing capable of transcending normal human power, a power that even Lord Atlas acquired during his youth. Lucius vividly remembers from his past life how Lord Atlas possessed inhuman physical might that allowed him to shatter steel and barriers effortlessly. In his previous life, Atlas used that transcendent blessing to easily heal wounds and demonstrate strength beyond human comprehension. Remembering his former master's terrifying abilities, our MC knows he cannot defeat Atlas with standard magic alone. Gripping his shirt tightly over his chest, Lucius realizes he needs to obtain a divine blessing of his own if he ever hopes to counter Atlas. Channeling the combined resolve of his past and present selves, he vows that his first step toward revenge is becoming the top student at the academy. The scene shifts to the magnificent Royal Academy, featuring a colossal open-air arena filled with thousands of eager spectators. Sitting in the VIP observation box overlooking the field, Lady Celeste clasps her hands nervously while Fran stands beside her. On the arena floor, Lucius stands tall in his pristine white academy uniform alongside a crowd of nervous noble examinees. High up in the stands, aristocrats and high society nobles gossip among themselves as they await the start of the ceremony. Standing among the candidates, Lucius remains completely calm, unbothered by the overwhelming pressure around him. Suddenly, a booming voice echoes across the entire Colosseum, demanding absolute silence from the audience. The High Examiner, an imposing figure wearing grand ceremonial robes and a cardinal's hat, steps up to address the crowd. He loudly proclaims that the Royal Academy selection ceremony has officially begun, triggering a sudden rumble across the arena. As examinees brace themselves, the announcer formally introduces the rules of this year's entrance exam. Lucius narrows his eyes, focusing entirely on the upcoming challenge ahead. The earth trembles as a massive iron gate in the center of the arena floor violently slides open. From the pit emerges a ferocious blue dragon beast known as the Crystal Lizard, surrounded by delicate floating metallic eggs. The examiner explains that candidates must protect the fragile sage's eggs floating around them while simultaneously subduing the beast. To pass the test, examinees must suppress the roaring crystal lizard without allowing a single egg to shatter. The examinees look up as floating magical devices hover directly above their heads to evaluate their performance. High in the air, a golden artifact known as the Scales of Judgment glows with brilliant light. The artifact measures both the candidates' defensive power, used to protect the eggs, and their offensive suppressive power used against the monster. Based on these two factors, weighted tokens are placed on either side of the scales, determining pass or fail by the total score. With the rules fully explained, the examiner orders all candidates to clear the field and proceed to the waiting area. As the examinees file into the waiting hall, noble spectators line the balconies, whispering insults as Lucius walks by. A fiery red herald named Lilia Magnate glares at him with contempt, while onlookers call him the cursed child of the Elminster family. An arrogant noble boy lounging on a chair mockingly adds that Lucius would have been executed 12 years ago if not for the appraisers. Ignoring the harsh rumors and glares completely, our MC continues walking with absolute composure and indifference. The first candidate called down to the arena is the hot, tempered Lilia Magnate, who leaps into battle surrounded by roaring flames. Confronting the giant crystal lizard, Lilia channels her mana and unleashes a massive fire spell, shouting for the beast to burn to ashes. A violent inferno blasts into the monster's face, while her heat barrier pushes the fragile floating eggs out of harm's way. Flames swirl across the ring as the exam panel announces her official scores: rank A in suppression, but only rank D in protection. The scales of judgment tilt heavily toward suppression, earning Lilia an official passing grade. Clicking her tongue in dissatisfaction with her low defense score, Lilia watches as staff handlers restrain the dazed beast. The next examinee steps up, subduing the monster by trapping it inside a cage of dark purple shadow magic. The scales of judgment tilt in the opposite direction, awarding the hooded examinee rank A in protection and rank C in suppression. With a solid total score, the examinee receives a pass, clearing the way for the next candidates to take the stage. The exam moves along rapidly as a candidate using Vine Magic wraps up his turn and passes the test. Another examinee steps up to the field, firing a beam of light at the monster while keeping the floating eggs intact. Candidate after candidate completes the challenge, earning passing marks from the Academy evaluators. The announcer then calls out the next high-profile participant, Lord Hector Gilbert, who walks onto the arena floor with calm grace. Watching from the sidelines, an examinee whispers in awe that Hector is rumored to be the greatest swordsman prodigy of the new generation. Observing him closely, Lucius notes that the Gilbert name belongs to a noble house he never heard of during his previous life. Unsheathing his sword before the roaring crystal lizard, Hector casually remarks that he has no need for the tedious tricks of mages. Dashing forward in a blur, the silver-haired prodigy prepares to show off his family's secret sword art. Crackling red energy wraps around his gloved hand as he tightly grips the hilt of his rapier. Glaring with blood-red eyes, Hector declares that his family's blade simply cuts down its target in absolute silence. Executing a single silent arc slash, he passes right by the massive beast before anyone can even react. A fraction of a second later, a massive explosion of red force ruptures the air, instantly subduing the giant dragon. Sheathing his blade, Hector walks away as the shockwave of his slash cleanly slices one of the floating eggs in half. High above, the scales of judgment immediately begin piling on golden weights to calculate his score. The whole crowd looks down in awe at the cratered arena floor where the giant beast lies completely defeated. The floating artifact displays a staggering rank S in suppression and rank A in protection, putting Hector squarely in first place. Nervous candidates in the waiting room tremble, admitting that his overwhelming speed was so fast they couldn't even blink. Finally, the announcer calls out the very last participant of the day, Lucius Elminster. As our MC steps out into the sunlight, the noble spectators in the stands begin shouting insults, calling him a disgusting cursed child. Lounging on a throne nearby, Hector smirks in arrogance, while onlookers scoff that Lucius's performance won't even serve as a decent sideshow after Hector's masterclass. Looking down at Lucius, Hector wears a condescending smile, eager to see the famed trash of the Elminster house fail miserably. The moment Lucius enters the ring, the furious crystal lizard charges up a massive, wide-area purple energy beam directly in front of him. High in the VIP stands, Celestia and Fran gasp in sheer terror for Lucius's safety while Lilia Magnate smirks in anticipation. The dragon unleashes a devastating torrent of purple flames that engulfs the entire arena floor in a wave of destruction. Watching from the High Council balcony, one of the school officials frantically asks how first student is expected to handle such a massive area of effect attack. The principal replies that normally, a mage would need to immediately cast a wide-area defensive magic barrier to shield all the floating eggs at once. But standing directly beneath the incoming inferno, Lucius doesn't bother casting a shield at all, glaring with cold, glowing golden eyes. In a split second, Lucius's body vanishes into thin air, leaving the giant dragon staring at empty space in confusion. The principal and High Chief Examiner lean over the balcony railing, their eyes widening in utter shock. Appearing high in mid-air right above the monster, Lucius manipulates raw spiritual aura without chanting a single spell word. Gracefully backflipping through the air, he uses subtle taps of pure mana to redirect the dragon's breath attack safely away from every single egg. High above the stadium, the school officials stare down at the arena floor, completely speechless at what they are witnessing. The principal mentally gasps in awe, realizing Lucius isn't using structured magic spells, but rather manipulating pure raw elements with godlike precision. Diving through the sky like a fallen angel, Lucius's control over the environment is so flawless it looks like he is snatching individual raindrops out of a downpour. Upside down in midair, the young MC locks eyes on the dragon's mana core with absolute lethal focus. Extending 2 fingers, he condenses every drop of his spiritual energy into a microscopic point of blinding light. As the dragon attempts to gather another attack in its mouth, Lucius's concentrated mana needle pierces straight through its magic flow. Plunging straight down toward the beast's head, he strikes the monster's core with surgical accuracy. Uttering the single command word, "Halt," a shockwave of electrical paralysis instantly surges through the dragon's entire body, shattering its mana core. The massive crystal lizard instantly loses all consciousness and collapses onto the stone floor, while every single fragile egg floats down safely around Lucius without a scratch. Total dead silence falls over the massive coliseum as thousands of spectators stare at the boy standing beside the fallen dragon. Suddenly, a massive golden weight slams onto the scales of judgment above the stadium with a deafening clank. The arrogant nobles in the audience gawk in absolute horror, their mouths hanging wide open in utter disbelief. An absurd towering stack of golden weights instantly materializes on the suppression pan of the judgment scale. At the exact same time, an equally massive tower of blue weights completely fills the protection pan. Overloaded by his godlike performance, the magical scales overflow as weights begin spilling off the pans and raining down from the sky. Nobles in the crowd scream in panic as the magical evaluation system completely breaks down under Lucius's score. Sweating profusely, Lilia Magnate watches in sheer horror as a floating weight drifts past her face. Standing calmly in the center of the stadium with his back to the crowd, Lucius doesn't even bother looking up at the spectacle. Above his head, the corrupted magic scale glitches violently before displaying a legendary, unprecedented double S rank. The glowing magical display confirms the final result, granting Lucius a flawless double S+ evaluation in both defense and suppression. The High Examiner officially announces Lucius Elminster as this year's top-ranking incoming student. Hearing the official verdict, the massive coliseum erupts into wild cheers as commoners applaud his legendary feat. In the VIP booth, Lady Celestia cries tears of relief in her hands while Fran frantically pumps her fist, screaming with joy for her young master. Meanwhile, sitting nearby on his throne, Lord Hector Gilbert clenches his gloved fist so hard it shakes with violent rage. Biting his lip until blood drips, Hector glares down at Lucius with murderous envy, unable to accept being dethroned. Standing alone on the arena floor, Lucius remains remarkably calm, surrounded by an air of quiet detachment. The High Examiner steps forward once more to announce the formal presentation of the Academy's top honors medal. Lucius stands in line alongside the other top candidates as the crowd watches the podium. The High Chief Examiner looks down with a stern, solemn expression as he prepares the ceremonial reward. Raising his hand, the Examiner summons a dazzling green magical crest that burns with radiant, floating flames. Lucius quietly observes the glowing green crest as it drifts down toward his chest. As he kneels respectfully on one knee, the green magic badge attaches itself to the lapel of his pristine white uniform. Closing his eyes, the young prodigy accepts the honor, taking another solid step toward his ultimate goal. The principal then steps forward, concluding the ceremony and declaring that official academy life will commence the following day. The scene shifts to the Grand Royal Academy Castle building, towering majestically under the bright morning sun. Announcements echo across the campus instructing all first-year students to check the bulletin boards for their room assignments. Remembering his departure from home, Lucius recalls how Maid Fran coughed awkwardly to clear her throat before delivering a farewell message. Fran had dramatically passed along a heartfelt statement from all the estate's servants, promising to eagerly await his victorious return. After Lucius's admission was confirmed, he warmly thanked Fran and asked her to tell the servants he would do his absolute best. Before leaving, Lady Celestia gently cradled her son's cheeks, asking if he was truly departing so soon. Pressing her forehead affectionately against his, she softly admitted that he would probably ignore her warnings not to overwork himself. She tenderly reminded him that many people at home loved him and were constantly praying for his safety. Showing rare genuine emotion, Lucius offered a soft, gentle smile and assured his mother that he understood. Glancing back one last time as he headed for the academy gates, he instructed Fran to take good care of his mother in his absence. Walking forward, Lucius reflected that securing first place in the entrance exam was a perfect starting point toward graduating as valedictorian. Back in the present at the academy dormitories, a student suddenly screams in outrage at the massive disparity in living conditions. While the top student enjoys a palace-like luxury estate, the lower-ranked examinees are crammed into dark, dreary stone barracks. Inside a cramped room, Lilia Magnet slams her fists on a table in a fit of rage, furious that they have to share a room that feels like a stable. As Lilia practically breathes fire and frustration, her calm green-haired roommate calmly plays a game of chess, telling her not to burn down the room. The green-haired girl casually tips over a chess piece, noting that the best part about the academy is that anyone can steal the top rank at any time. The falling chess piece shifts the scene directly to a massive, dark lecture hall where the first-year class gathers. Lucius sits quietly in the front row with his arms crossed, while jealous nobles behind him whisper rumors that he cheated using cursed magic. A silver-haired student in the back row wonders out loud if Lucius might actually just be an insanely talented genius. Sitting nearby, Hector turns around with red veins popping on his face, angrily shouting that Lucius's victory was just a cheap trick. Lucius completely ignores the hostile chatter around him, sitting peacefully as he waits for the teacher to arrive. Outside the high-arched windows, a dark hooded figure stands silently on the rooftop, observing the classroom from above. Clutched in the hooded figure's hand is an ancient leather tome as the mysterious instructor balances atop the steep roof tiles. In the blink of an eye, the hooded teacher teleports inside and sits right at the front desk, surprising Lilia as he whispers that someone is approaching. Still stewing in his seat, Hector glares angrily at the front of the room, thinking that in a real sword fight, he would easily crush Lucius. Suddenly, the hooded instructor teleports right behind Hector in a cloud of dark blue shadow, telling him to erase his useless fighting spirit before class begins. Startled by the instantaneous movement, Hector breaks into a cold sweat as the teacher looms right over his shoulder. Trying to save face, Hector smirks arrogantly, declaring that he has no obligation to listen to a masked stranger. He mocks the instructor, scoffing that a cheap teleportation trick isn't enough to intimidate an elite swordsman like him. Several noble students mockingly laugh along, claiming that for an imperial certified teacher, he completely lacks dignity and authority. Beneath his dark hood, the instructor lets out a cold, wary sigh at the student's childish arrogance. Raising a long, clawed hand right next to Hector's head, the teacher sternly warns him that he will only offer this advice one last time. Snapping his clawed fingers, the instructor utters a single, authoritative command: erase. A crushing surge of dark blue gravitational magic instantly erupts throughout the entire classroom, pinning every student to their desks. Slammed flat against his desk by the overwhelming pressure wave, Hector sweats in total panic, terrified by the sheer weight crushing his body. The overwhelming pressure leaves Lilia and the surrounding students trembling in sheer terror, utterly convinced that the man before them is a complete monster. Meanwhile, our protagonist watches calmly, realizing that the instructor is effortlessly keeping the entire room under control without breaking a sweat. After releasing his pressure, the instructor warns the humbled students that they had better remember this moment moving forward. Walking slowly down the aisle, he sternly begins addressing the classroom about what life at the academy actually entails. He reminds them that whatever noble bloodlines or famous family names they possess mean absolutely nothing here. Lilia sits nervously at her desk, sweating profusely as she barely manages to process his overwhelming aura. Placing his hand on the desk, the instructor reinforces that outside status is completely useless within these walls. With an imposing look, his sharp eyes lock onto the crowd, making sure every single student understands his message. Turning toward the lecture hall, he declares directly to everyone that strength is the only thing that matters in this place. His sharp glare pierces through the classroom, leaving zero room for argument among the intimidated audience. Our MC maintains his stoic composure while the instructor lets out a subtle, ominous smile. Cloaked in dark energy, the instructor announces that it is finally time to officially begin their class. Standing behind the main podium of the massive lecture hall, he introduces himself to the entire class as Valerius. Valerius reveals that he will be the instructor in charge of teaching them fundamental theory at the academy. Hearing his name, our MC immediately zeroes in on him, instantly recognizing who this man really is. He remembers that Valerius was actually the same appraiser who had examined him when he was just a young child. Seeing him here, our MC is impressed to learn he is an academy instructor, noting that his spiritual energy is remarkable as someone reporting directly to the Empire. Valerius moves right along, declaring that his first duty is to explain the strict rules governing the academy. Raising his hand, he unleashes a wave of magical light that manifests a massive crystal projection right in front of the class, telling them their ultimate goal is to graduate at the top. The giant floating crystal displays the real-time school rankings, causing the students to whisper in surprise as they spot their names on it. Looking up at the board, our MC finds himself sitting at rank 50 under the name Lucius Elminster, as Valerius explains that these rankings reflect every single activity and class result. Just below him at rank 51 is Hector Arclight, who looks visibly annoyed by his starting position. Valerius clarifies that these ranks update in real time based on performance, causing Lilia to burst out in frustration when she sees herself all the way down at rank 72. Valerius goes on to explain that to graduate at the very top, one must enter the top 16 ranked students and compete in a grand tournament held every 4 years. A glowing crest appears as he introduces the prestigious Academy Dueling Tournament, which every elite student aims to win. He reveals that whoever emerges victorious from this tournament will earn the title of top student along with a special blessing. Hearing about this valuable reward, our MC quietly tightens his fist with determination. However, an arrogant student suddenly jumps up in anger, complaining that maintaining a top 16 rank for 4 full years without a break is completely absurd. The moment he starts whining, the magical rank counter floating right beside him suddenly activates with a loud beep at rank 400. Right before his eyes, his ranking digits rapidly tick down further and further, plummeting deeper into the 400s. Valerius slowly approaches the terrified student, warning everyone that complaining and whining are also factored into their evaluation, so they best watch their mouth. Holding sinister glowing figures representing the lowest positions, Valerius drops his most terrifying revelation yet, stating that once a year, the bottom 125 students will face severe consequences regardless of reason. With a single squeeze, he ruthlessly crushes the minifigures in his hand, declaring that those at the bottom will be forcibly expelled from the academy. As murmurs spread throughout the classroom, Hector realizes this brutal system is how the academy balances incoming students with forced dropouts. Valerius looks out over the silent hall, asking if they have finally grasped just how severe and unforgiving this academy really is. Without giving them a moment to rest, he channels his mana, announcing that their very first lesson begins right now. Swirling dark spatial magic ruptures across the classroom floor behind him, shocking all the students. Lilia recoils in shock as she realizes the instructor is casting high-level mass teleportation magic inside the lecture hall. Even Hector grits his teeth in frustration at the instructor's terrifying display of power, calling him an absolute monster. In a flash of light, the entire class is instantly warped out of the building and dropped onto an eerie, foggy outdoor landscape. While Lily and the others look around in total disbelief, our MC stands completely calm and composed. Before them lies a long, glowing green stone bridge stretching over a dark, bottomless abyss. Valerius gathers the students together and announces that it is time for their first actual assignment. Looking at the class with a cold demeanor, he tells them that their objective is actually quite simple. Stepping onto the green stone, he instructs them that they must successfully cross this entire bridge within 1 month. Seeing him walk across so easily, several students foolishly whisper among themselves, believing this test will be a piece of cake. Excited to grab an early lead, 2 cocky students sprint past our MC, boasting that a simple bridge won't pose any challenge. A female student asks Hector if he plans to move, but Hector stays put, sensing that something isn't right. Ignoring all caution, the 2 overconfident students charge headfirst onto the glowing green bridge. One of the students plants his boot onto the stone path, completely unaware of what is about to happen. The moment the student's foot touches the stone, a volatile surge of green spiritual energy instantly erupts and violently envelopes his body. Drained of all his strength in a split second, the student collapses groaning as the magical aura violently strips away his power. Hector coldly warns the rest of the class to stop right where they are unless they want to suffer the exact same fate. Unable to regain his balance, the helpless student slips over the ledge and plummets straight down into the pitch black abyss below. Staring horror-stricken over the edge, Lily can barely process the deadly reality of what just happened beneath them. Watching Valerius walk effortlessly across the green stone, our MC quietly observes the scene, beginning to put the pieces together. Looking at the bridge with his sharp yellow eyes, our MC deduces that the structure is designed to actively drain spiritual energy. From across the gap, Valerius reminds him that strength is the foundation of everything and tells him to acquire enough energy within a month to cross. Terrified by the deadly demonstration, a timid student nervously raises his voice to ask the instructor a question. The student anxiously asks Valerius what the usual success rate for passing this first class has been in previous years. Valerius responds nonchalantly, telling the crowd that in a typical year, the rate usually sits at roughly 20%. But then, a sinister smile creeps across his face as he casually adds that he actually misspoke. Standing amidst the dark mist, he chillingly clarifies what that statistic actually meant. He reveals to the horrified students that 20% isn't the pass rate, but rather the actual survival rate of the class. The entire crowd breaks into utter panic, desperately wondering how they are supposed to increase their energy enough to survive. Seeing the sheer impossibility of the task, students frantically question if anyone could realistically grow that strong in just 30 days. However, as the crowd panics, our MC narrows his eyes, realizing that everyone is misunderstanding the true nature of the test. Recalling how quickly the green aura devoured the fallen student's energy, he calculates the exact drain rate in his mind. Looking at the sheer length of the bridge, our MC realizes that even someone with a massive pool of spiritual energy would still get drained dry before reaching the end. Smirking in the shadows, he sees right through the instructor's trick, knowing that telling them to simply gather more spiritual energy is just a clever fake out. With complete confidence, our MC smiles, having fully deciphered the hidden secret to clearing this deadly lesson. Meanwhile, the dark reality of the 20% survival rate continues to weigh heavily over the terrified crowd. Several students stand frozen in absolute horror, unable to accept that 80% of them are likely going to die. Looking down at the ledge, they realize in terror that the student who fell earlier isn't just failed, but completely dead. Overcome with despair, terrified students begin breaking down, screaming that they refuse to die during a simple school lesson. Unwilling to risk his life, one student decides on the spot that he will immediately contact his mother to cancel his academy enrollment. Listening coldly, Valerius remarks that backing out now is actually a wise decision for someone so weak. He bluntly tells them that those whose resolve breaks at this level would only ended up dead on the real battlefield anyway. Unleashing dark magic around his body, Valerius announces that their official 1-month training period starts right now. Above the field, a massive golden timer ignites with a blinding light, officially beginning the 29-day countdown. As Valerius commands him to begin, the panicked crowd immediately scatters in all directions to start training. Standing firm amid the chaotic rush, our MC keeps his cool, already knowing exactly what he needs to do. Fast-forwarding 20 days into the training period, the remaining students are seen desperately running through the woods under intense physical exertion. Gasping for breath, they push their bodies to the absolute limit as the ticking clock relentlessly drains away their remaining time. Determined not to fall behind, Lilia screams at the top of her lungs as she pushes through extreme exhaustion during her brutal workout. Her reckless and intense training regimen shocks the nearby male students, who yell out that what she's doing is ridiculously dangerous. Panting heavily with bloodshot eyes, Lilia ignores their warnings, focused entirely on increasing her output enough to overcome the test. In the pouring rain, other students struggle painfully just to stand while carrying heavy bags of stones tied to wooden shoulder poles. As one student groans under the weight, he suddenly freezes in complete disbelief at what he sees nearby. Pushing her physical limits to the extreme, Lilia is seen lifting a massive, giant boulder high above head with her bare hands. With veins bulging and yellow eyes flared, her insane determination shows as she forces her body to carry 10 times her normal capacity. Elsewhere in the landscape, a black, gloved hand touches the ground as another top student prepares his own investigation. Hector kneels quietly on the rocky terrain, carefully evaluating the surrounding environment near the bridge. Looking at the path with sharp, analytical red eyes, he formulates his own hypothesis regarding the instructor's test. He picks up a small stone and casually tosses it onto the surface of the green bridge to test his theory. He watches intently as the stone bounces several times along the green cobble path. The second the stone comes to a stop, a dark purple cursing aura erupts around it, confirming that prolonged contact triggers the energy drain. Realizing that the drain only applies once contact time exceeds a specific limit, Hector smiles, having figured out the secret. Exploding with a terrifying surge of red aura, he ignites his physical enhancement magic to maximum output. In a blinding flash of red energy, Hector blasts forward at incredible speed, aiming to cross the bridge so fast the curse can't even touch him. Hector sprints forward across the bridge, kicking off with incredible speed while red aura trails behind his blade. With his sharp red eyes locked onto the path ahead, Hector pushes his physical enhancement to the absolute limit. The countdown timer shows 3 days remaining as our MC sits quietly meditating under a tree in the forest. Our MC ponders that clearing this lesson doesn't depend on the sheer volume of spiritual energy a person possesses. Forming a diamond shape with his glowing hands, he realizes the real key is the technique used to manipulate that energy. As magical energy swirls around his hands, he reflects on the hard lessons learned from his previous life. He remembers mastering meticulous control down to the cellular level during his past life training. Through endless, needle-precise practice, he pushed his focus to limits far beyond normal human capability. That excruciating dedication allowed him to invent his signature technique, the Phantom Shadow. However, perfecting such extreme control required him to literally cough up blood from the overwhelming physical strain. Standing on the brink of death countless times in his past life was what granted him this absolute mastery. Meditating serenely, our MC knows applying his past life spiritual control to magic is a simple matter. Nearby, 2 arrogant students mock him for sitting still, assuming he cheated his way into the academy. The hooded student overhears them calling our MC the child of the curse as they walk away into the woods. Unbothered by their harsh words, the hooded student quietly watches our MC sitting atop the rock. With only 2 days left on the countdown, Lilia continues her frantic physical training in the pouring rain. Down to the final day, Hector relentlessly practices sword swings, cutting through the air with red aura. Satisfied with his preparation, Hector lets out a confident smirk as the final hours draw near. All the remaining students assemble near the edge of the bridge under dark, ominous clouds. Glancing over at our MC, Lilia narrows her eyes, frustrated by his apparent lack of effort. She fumes inwardly, wondering why the top incoming student has done nothing but sit around since day one. The magical countdown timer ticks down to its final 3 seconds as our MC maintains his calm expression. As the timer hits its last fraction of a second, a subtle smile touches our MC's face. The clock strikes 0 and Valerius appears on the bridge in a sudden flare of dark purple magic. Landing gracefully on the stone path, Valerius formally announces that the promised deadline has arrived. Standing at the far side of the massive gap, he gazes across at the anxious group of students. With an intimidating smirk, Valerius challenges them to step forward and show the results of their training. Hector and Lilia stand at the forefront of the group, ready to take on the challenge. Unsure of what to do, the terrified students whisper among themselves, wondering who will go first. 2 nervous students bicker back and forth, each trying to force the other onto the dangerous bridge. Suddenly, 2 pairs of boots step forward in perfect unison, one black and one bright red. Hector and Lilia step up simultaneously, with Lilia loudly declaring that she will be the first to cross. Glaring at each other intensely, Hector insists he was faster while Lilia snaps back at him in anger. Hector calmly tries to dismiss her, prompting an enraged Lilia to demand a rock, paper, scissors match to settle it. Watching their ridiculous argument from behind, our MC can't help but let out a silent smirk. Lilia triumphantly throws scissors and wins, leaving Hector dramatically crestfallen over his defeat. Nearby, two other students glance at each other, noting how hard they worked for this exact moment. Before Lilia can take her first step, two impatient students suddenly push past her and rush for the bridge. Furious at being cut in line, Lilia screams in rage that their rock, paper, scissors game was completely pointless. The moment the two students' boots touch the stone, the bridge's dark purple curse instantly flares up around their legs. The dark magic devours their bodies in seconds, causing both students to scream in agony as their energy is drained. Watching them fall into the trap, Hector coldly calls them idiots for rushing in without thinking. Drained of all power, the helpless students slip off the edge and fall into the fog-shrouded chasm below. Another student collapses on his knees, groaning in despair as the curse begins consuming his remaining energy. Seeing them crumble one by one, the remaining crowd realizes that simply gathering more power was completely useless. Valerius watches silently, knowing the true secret of the exam has nothing to do with raw power. To pass, a student must refine their internal spiritual energy faster than the bridge can drain it away. Masterclass spiritual refinement is the true foundation required to overcome this deadly test. Looking across at the terrified students, Valerius mockingly asks why no one has managed to cross yet. A panicked student yells back in frustration, reminding the instructor that falling off means instant death. Tired of waiting around, Lilia shoves a hesitant student out of her way, shouting at everyone to move. Standing at the edge of the gap, she stares down the bridge while wind whips wildly through her crimson hair. Taking a slow, deep breath, Lilia closes her eyes and focuses all her concentration for the run ahead. Snapping her eyes open with an intense yellow glare, she prepares to unleash her full power onto the path. The instant her foot steps onto the stone, a massive surge of fiery red energy erupts around her entire body. Roaring with pure determination, she charges forward through the storm of fire, forcing her way past the curse. From across the abyss, Valerius watches her approach, acknowledging her impressive energy output. However, as she continues running, the bridge's dark purple curse begins clinging to her legs and draining her flames. Her fiery aura sputters under the intense strain, causing Lilia to stumble as the curse tries to drag her down. Valerius quietly observes her struggle, knowing that the bridge continuously siphons all spiritual power from its target. Refusing to succumb, Lilia forcefully slams her boot down, reigniting her flames through sheer physical willpower. Surprised by her sudden resurgence, Valerius turns his head as the intense light from her aura catches his eye. Panting heavily through gritted teeth, Lilia angrily mutters that nobody should dare underestimate her. Exploding forward in a massive wave of fire, she screams that a simple bridge will never be enough to stop her. With one final powerful leap, her boot stumps firmly onto the solid ground at the opposite side. Valerius is genuinely impressed, realizing she pushed out so much raw energy that the bridge couldn't drain it fast enough. Fairy aura radiating around her, Lilia triumphantly completes her run right past the instructor. But as soon as she crosses the finish line, her energy completely runs out, sending her crashing face first into the dirt. Lying flat on her back gasping for air, she rests as Valerius turns around to look down at her. Looking up with a smug, cocky grin, Lilia cheekily asks the instructor how he likes that performance. Unfazed by her attitude, Valerius calmly informs her that she passed, causing Lilia to cheer in victory from the floor. Back at the starting line, Hector scoffingly watches her success, completely unimpressed by her brute force strategy. He mutters to himself that her method was grossly inefficient and would only leave her helpless in a real fight. Narrowing his eyes, Hector turns his focus toward his own plan for clearing the bridge. He recalls his earlier test with the stone, remembering that the bridge doesn't drain energy instantly upon contact. Because there is a brief delay before the curse activates, Hector realizes speed is the ultimate key. Tightly gripping the hilt of his sword, he prepares to execute his strategy. Crouching low as red physical enhancement magic flares around him, he decides not to give the bridge any time to drain him. In a blinding flash of red light, Hector launches himself forward like a cannonball across the path. His boots barely graze the stone surfaces as he sprints at blinding speeds, declaring his blade won't be touched by a curse. Drawing his sword in midair, he leaps over Valerius with incredible flair and speed. Landing gracefully on the other side, his silver hair flows in the wind as he admires his own perfection. Valerius acknowledges that crossing before the curse can absorb energy was a clever way to think outside the box. However, as Hector sheathes his sword, Valerius sternly points out that attempting to slash one's instructor is unacceptable. Hector dismisses the accusation with a smirk, casually accepting his passing mark as a given. Watching from across the gap, the remaining students gasp in awe, blown away by Hector's terrifying speed. Meanwhile, Lilia watches from the ground as Valerius turns his attention back toward the remaining class. The crowd suddenly notices our MC stepping up to the starting line, recognizing him as the top-ranked incoming student. Looking at his quiet demeanor, several students express doubt, wondering if he really possesses the strength to make it across. Observing the trapped students groaning on the path, they note that our MC doesn't seem to have high energy or speed enhancements. Intrigued by the young Elminster, Valerius watches closely, eager to see what method he will use. Quietly channeling blue electrical sparks around his body, our MC calmly takes his first step onto the stone bridge. To everyone's utter shock, he casually walks forward at a normal pace, completely unaffected by the dark purple curse. The hooded student watches in amazement, realizing that our MC's top ranking was definitely no fluke. Passing right by the collapsed students, our MC continues his serene stroll across the dangerous path. Watching him walk over so casually, Lilia complains that his approach lacks flair, while Valerius recognizes his flawless energy refinement. With effortless grace, our MC takes his final step off the bridge and lands onto solid ground. He casually strolls past Valerius without even batting an eye, leaving the instructor quietly contemplating his performance. Right behind him, another student suddenly comes running across the bridge in pure excitement, celebrating that his training worked. Surprised by the sudden commotion, Valerius looks back as the rest of the class realizes the bridge's curse has completely deactivated. Seeing the bridge's curse vanish, the remaining students rush across in excitement, cheering that their hard training paid off. Lilia admits she's surprised by their capability, but Hector scoffs, calling them simpletons driven by mob mentality. Valerius stands frozen in sheer disbelief, veins popping on his forehead as he realizes what actually caused the bridge to deactivate. Looking back at our MC, the instructor realizes this impossible feat was entirely Lucius Elminster's doing. Valerius reflects in shock on how our MC manipulated his refined energy during his casual walk across the path. While crossing, our MC injected a tiny, precise amount of spiritual energy into the bridge's complex spell formula without triggering its alarm. In doing so, he silently unravels the ancient curse that had remained completely unbreakable for over 1,000 years. Hearing a sharp cracking noise echo through the air, the students freeze as Valerius looks back toward the ravine. Both Lilia and Hector stare in shock as they realize the entire spell formula binding the bridge has been utterly destroyed. With a deafening roar, the massive stone bridge disintegrates into pieces, exploding into a cloud of dust and debris. A flashback shows our MC calmly channeling his energy control, effortlessly dispelling the ancient structure with a single touch. Dust billows across the ravine, leaving Valerius awestruck by the sheer terrifying genius of our MC's ability. As the clouds settle, Valerius lets out a sinister grin while our MC stands quietly with a calm expression. Unaware of the truth, the surviving students wonder if the old bridge simply crumbled from age and wear. Gasping for air, several students realize with dread that if they had taken one step slower, they would have plunged into the abyss. Despite the close call, 2 students cheer joyfully, relieved that they managed to pass the deadly lesson. However, a brown-haired student lowers his head in quiet sorrow as he thinks about his fallen classmates. He grieves for those who fell into the ravine first, knowing they gave everything they had trying to survive. The remaining students look down at the shattered remains of the bridge, mourning the friends they lost in the dark depth. Noticing their distress, Valerius casually snaps his long, clawed fingers, telling the class not to worry. In an instant, dark purple magic gently lifts all the fallen students out of the abyss, setting them safely on the ground. Shocked to see their friends alive and unharmed, the brown-haired student shouts out in utter disbelief. Looking across the entire class, Valerius formally announces that every single student gathered before him has officially passed. With an intimidating smile, he confirms that not a single life was actually lost during this exam. Confused, a student stammers out a question, asking why the ones who fell into the abyss were allowed to pass as well. Valerius explains that while the run assessed their energy cultivation, the true purpose of the test was to judge their personal resolve. Classmates help the exhausted survivors to their feet as everyone absorbs the instructor's unexpected explanation. Valerius commends them for refusing to run away, standing firm even when death was staring them directly in the face. From above, he declares that such strength of spirit will become a weapon far greater than any natural talent. Inspired by his words, the students listen intently while Lilia stands proudly with a confident smile. Even Hector silently processes the instructor's lesson, acknowledging the wisdom behind the trial. Looking up at the parting clouds, Valerius emphasizes that the step they all took today carries immeasurable value. Sunlight breaks through the sky, illuminating the triumphant group of students who survived the Academy's first trial. Valerius gives them a rare, genuine smile, formally offering his congratulations to the whole class. As bright light washes over the clearing, he tells them that he is genuinely proud of everyone present. Lilia proudly boasts that success was obvious, while other students hug and celebrate behind her. Standing apart from the cheerful crowd, our MC rests under a tree while the quiet, hooded student watches him. Our MC maintains a serene expression, unfazed by the praise and celebration happening around him. Stepping forward, Valerius's robe swishes, drawing the crowd's attention back to him as he prepares to make another announcement. He warns them that passing is separate from their actual evaluation, announcing that he will now reveal the updated student rankings. Valerius declares that Lucius Elminster has moved up 5 spots, officially taking 45th place. Hearing his new rank, our MC keeps a calm profile, completely indifferent to his rise on the board. Nearby students whisper in shock, wondering how someone who casually walked across the bridge received such a high evaluation. Looking at each other, the students speculate that the top spot after Elminster will obviously belong to Hector. Lilia smugly puffs out her chest, convinced that her fiery display earned her 46th place instead. Ignoring their chatter, Valerius points directly into the crowd to announce the 46th position. To everyone's shock, he calls out the name No Raven, revealing the hooded student standing quietly in dark robes. Hector glares in pure rage and disbelief, furiously demanding to know who this unknown guy is. Realizing all eyes are on him, No suddenly turns around and bolts into the woods as students shout in surprise. Furious that a plain guy in a hood ranked higher than her, Lilia screams in rage while her terrified classmates try to calm her down. A hooded student cries out in distress after the grueling test wraps up, completely overwhelmed by what just happened. Meanwhile, our protagonist Lucius remains as cool as ever, calmly watching the other trainees react to the end of the exam. The instructor steps forward to address the crowd, declaring that the evaluation is officially over and telling everyone to accept their new rankings. The updated rank list pops up, showing Lilia placed 57th while complaining about someone passing her, as another student realizes she can't match her power. Hector lands at 47th place, visibly annoyed while telling a classmate to shut up when she casually asks if his leg is okay. Right near the top sits Lucius at 45th place, positioned just above the mysterious hooded student No Raven, who secured 46th. Whispers immediately spread through the crowd of students, with some celebrating their rank increase, while others mourn how far they dropped. Before anyone can get too comfortable, the instructor cuts through the noise and orders everyone to pay attention to tomorrow's academy schedule. He drops the big news right away, announcing that all students will be permanently split into 4-person squads starting tomorrow. He explains that at this academy, your 4-man team functions as your main operational unit for every class and real-world mission. The system is simple. Higher-ranked teams will naturally be trusted with significantly harder and more dangerous assignments. But there's a catch because individual rankings keep changing, meaning your own teammates are also your direct rivals in the hierarchy. Hearing that they're forced to cooperate with the very people they're competing against makes several students sweat nervously. The instructor adds that squad assignments and their very first official mission details will be revealed the following day. However, he makes one special exception right on the spot by grouping the top 4 ranked students together into a single team. Lilia immediately loses her mind over the decision, furiously screaming about why she has to be teamed up with these specific guys. She violently points at her new teammates and warns them not to hold her back, while the other students stare in disbelief at such a stacked squad. Ignoring her outburst, the instructor wraps up the briefing and tells them to prepare themselves for what's coming next. Lucius just glares thoughtfully from the side, analyzing the situation without making a scene. He realizes that since missions are handed out based on overall squad strength, a teammate of top rankers is guaranteed to get the absolute hardest jobs. Even though dealing with these eccentric teammates will be a massive headache, he knows taking on tough missions is the fastest way to grow stronger. Just as they're about to leave, the instructor turns around to drop one last surprise specifically for the top 4 team. With a dangerous smirk on his face, he reveals what their first practical assignment for tomorrow will actually be. As the 4 of them turn to listen, the instructor sets a surprisingly simple condition for their exercise. His intimidating aura flares up as he challenges all 4 of them to land just a single hit on him during tomorrow's test. The next day arrives, and Lilia is already confident, mocking the task and claiming even dead weight should easily land one blow. Standing out on the training grounds, she steps up first, declaring that she'll show the rest of the team how it's done. But the instructor just smirks back, warning her not to get the wrong idea about where they stand compared to him. Suddenly, a massive surge of blue mana erupts from his body, completely shocking Lilia and Hector before they can even move. A terrifying storm of energy surrounds the instructor as he makes it clear that none of them could ever defeat him in a one-on-one fight. Smiling menacingly, he dares all 4 top students to come at him simultaneously with everything they've got. Facing such overwhelming pressure, Lilia, Hector, and Noah immediately tense up as they feel the insane gap in power. Lucius, on the other hand, stays completely composed, staring down the instructor's massive aura with an unbothered smirk. The sheer pressure of the instructor's magic tears through the atmosphere, forcing the entire squad onto the defensive. Refusing to back down, Lilia angrily surges forward, shouting that she's taking the first hit herself and warning everyone to stay out of her way. Observing the instructor's terrifying power, Lucius reminds himself that this man is an official imperial appraiser. That means he's one of the Empire's ultimate military assets, with only a tiny handful of people at the entire academy capable of beating him in a duel. Instead of being intimidated, Lucius grins with excitement, while the instructor gets into position with razor-sharp claws extended. As the instructor gives the signal, Hector lunges with his blade, Lilia ignites her fire, Noah prepares magic, and Lucius dashes forward. With lightning sparking around his eyes, Lucius realizes this is the perfect chance to test his current limits against a genuine powerhouse. All 4 elite students attack at once, coordinating their movements to overwhelm the instructor from every direction. Hector reaches him first with a blinding sword strike, but the instructor casually blocks the sharp blade using just 2 fingers. A violent shockwave echoes across the battlefield from the impact, yet the instructor's stance doesn't budge an inch. Hector grits his teeth in utter disbelief as the instructor easily holds his sword in place with a relaxed smile. Before he can recover, Lilia leaps high into the air, summoning a massive vortex of flames right above the instructor's head. Diving down like a meteor, she channels all her rage into a fire-infused downward strike straight toward him. Her eyes glow intensely as her burning fist comes crashing down with immense destruction behind it. The fiery impact detonates against the ground, creating a massive explosion of flames and shattered rock that engulfs the area. But inside the inferno, the instructor casually catches Lia's flaming claw with his bare hand, leaving her completely stunned. Meanwhile, Noah finishes unleashing a wide-range spell from the rear to support the team as the battle escalates. A glowing purple magic circle manifests beneath Noah's boots as he prepares to unleash his own support spell. Raising both hands in the air, the hooded student channels his dark energy to pressure the instructor from a distance. Streams of purple mana shoot upward into the sky, raining down toward the target while Lilia keeps pushing her offense. The barrage of magical projectiles crashes all around the instructor, forcing him to block while Hector advances from the flank. Swiping his sword through the air, Hector deflects a stray blast and grumbles to himself about his teammates being in his way. Seeing Hector get right in her line of attack, Lilia immediately loses her temper and shouts at him from behind. She grabs Hector by his long white hair, completely catching him off guard before he can even react. Furious at his reckless positioning, she violently yanks him back while screaming at him for jumping in out of nowhere. She continues yelling at him for almost getting himself killed, while Noah and the instructor just watch their ridiculous argument in silence. Shaking off the distraction, Noah refocuses on the instructor as the tension on the battlefield ramps back up. The instructor narrows his eyes under the bright sunlight, completely unfazed by the squad's chaos. High above the training grounds, Lucius begins concentrating a massive amount of blue mana into a single point in his palm. With his yellow eyes glowing with intense focus, he points 2 fingers forward to lock onto his target. Down on the ground, Hector and Lilia break away from their squabble and charge straight back toward the instructor. Suddenly, a giant beam of blue energy rains down from the sky, aiming to crush the instructor where he stands. Lightning flashes across the air as the instructor effortlessly dodges the direct impact with terrifying speed. The resulting shockwave blasts across the field, throwing Lilia, Hector, and Noah violently backward. Dust and shattered rocks fill the air as the 3 top students brace themselves against the destructive wind. Amidst the floating debris, Lucius lightly lands back on his feet without taking a single scratch. Looking down at the destruction he caused, Lucius takes a moment to assess the situation. Stepping out of the dust cloud, the instructor sarcastically asks Lucius to take better care of the Academy's facilities next time. The entire area around the instructor has been hollowed out into a massive crater, proving just how powerful Lucius's strike was. The 2 lock eyes, exchanging confident smirks as they acknowledge each other's strength. Refusing to be outdone, Lilia leaps back into the fight, shouting that she isn't finished, while Hector slashes forward alongside her. Lucius watches them calmly, letting his aggressive teammates draw all the instructor's attention once again. Lilia's flame fist, Hector's sword, and Noah's purple magic all strike simultaneously, forcing the instructor onto defense. With a sudden burst of purple mana, the instructor repels Lilia and Hector yet again with 0 effort. But as the chaos unfolds, Lucius' eyes widen as he notices a subtle flaw in the instructor's movements. As his 3 teammates are blown back once again, Lucius stands perfectly still, carefully observing every single detail. The instructor keeps his eyes closed in confidence, maintaining what seems like an impenetrable defense against all 3 attackers. Lucius realizes that while it looks like the instructor is fighting all 3 of them at once, that's not actually what's happening. He figures out that the instructor is actually dealing with them one by one at near, imperceptible speeds, shifting targets instantly. Because he has to make rapid transitions between attacks, a tiny split-second opening appears in a random spot behind him every time. Analyzing the pattern, Lucius identifies the fleeting blind spot that momentarily forms during those high-speed transitions. He decides to match the exact timing of his teammates' attacks so he can pinpoint where that tiny opening will spawn. Down below, Lilia steps firmly onto the ground and prepares to launch another full-power assault. Refusing to give up, she screams in defiance as she, Hector, and Noah rush the instructor together once more. Sensing their relentless determination, the instructor lets out an amused smirk as they close in. Lilia and Hector strike with everything they have, forcing the instructor to execute his high-speed parries at maximum momentum. Purple magical arcs rain down from Noah above, keeping the instructor locked in a rapid defense transitions. Noah stays firmly planted on his magic circle in the rear, continually pouring mana into the ongoing assault. The instructor turns into a blur of motion, blocking and deflecting every incoming strike in rapid succession. He deflects Hector's blade and Lilia's fist back to back at insane speeds, completely focused on the 3 in front of him. Using the chaotic brawl as cover, Lucius leaps high into the air from a tree branch, hovering directly above the fight. Lilia and Hector push through their limits, combining flame and steel to force one last frantic transition from the instructor. The instructor casually repels them both while declaring that their efforts won't work, completely unaware of Lucius above. As the 3 students strain to draw his focus, the instructor's rapid defense creates the exact split-second opening Lucius predicted. From high above, Lucius locks on the tiny blind spot on the instructor's back and fires a concentrated blue magic projectile straight into it. A confident smirk spreads across Lucius's face as he watches his attack bypass the instructor's defense entirely. The concentrated blue spell detonates directly against the instructor's back, cleanly landing the required single hit and completing the mission. Lucius's concentrated spell slams directly against the instructor from above, creating a blinding explosion of blue energy. The sheer force of the blast forces Hector and Lilia to shield their eyes as the radiant shockwave spreads across the field. Energy erupts violently at the point of impact, kicking up a massive cloud of dust and light that covers the entire area. Lucius watches calmly from a distance, waiting to see if his calculated attack was enough to penetrate the defense. But as the light clears, the instructor is revealed standing completely unharmed inside a spherical blue barrier. Lilia stammers in utter shock, while Hector grits his teeth at the sight of the untouched defensive shield. Sweat drips down Noah's face as he realizes that even Lucius's powerful surprise strike couldn't leave a single scratch on him. Bringing his hands together, the instructor mockingly praises them for at least forcing him to deploy defensive magic. The swirling winds subside around the training grounds as he lowers his hands and looks back toward Lucius. He sighs in disappointment, declaring that he apparently expected far too much from the top-ranked students of the academy. Dropping a harsh ultimatum, he warns them that if they fail to land a hit within the next hour, their squad will be disbanded and demoted to lower-tier teams. The threat of losing their top status and getting reassigned sends a wave of anger and panic through both Hector and Lilia. The instructor reminds them that they were told to fight as a 4-man team, warning them that he won't be holding back anymore. Glancing sharply toward Lucius, he adds that they had better come up with an actual plan instead of just waiting for a lucky opening. Lucius listens quietly to the instructor's words, his sharp yellow eyes analyzing everything that just transpired. As soon as the instructor walks off, Lilia throws a total temper tantrum, stomping the ground and screaming in pure rage. Clenching her fists, she seethes with frustration while Noah watches her nervously from the side. Suddenly, Lilia turns around and marches straight over to Lucius, shouting out to get his attention. She aggressively confronts him, demanding to know if a smart guy like him has some kind of hidden plan up his sleeve. Lucius turns his head to face her, maintaining his cool and unbothered expression despite her heated approach. Pointing right at him, she admits she hates relying on him, but since he forced the instructor to use magic, she's willing to listen to his ideas. Her gloved hand trembles into a tight fist as she struggles to swallow her massive pride. Gritting her teeth, she swears that she refuses to fail or be demoted in a pathetic place like this. Seeing her resolve, Lucius finally opens his mouth and begins to explain what he noticed during his earlier attack. Lilia, Hector, and Noah all gather around him, listening intently to every word the blonde MC has to say. Lucius reveals that when his spell struck the barrier earlier, he saw a subtle distortion in the spiritual energy of the shield. Hector raises an eyebrow in disbelief, stunned that Lucius was able to perceive such a minute detail in a fraction of a second. Lucius continues his breakdown, explaining the exact principle behind the instructor's high-level defensive technique. He breaks down the mechanics, showing that the barrier hardens by concentrating spiritual energy specifically at the exact point of impact. He concludes that if they strike multiple points on the barrier simultaneously, the spiritual energy will be forced to disperse, drastically weakening its overall strength. Noah and Hector are blown away by his tactical brilliance, marveling at how he deciphered a complex spell's weakness in a split second. Understanding the strategy immediately, Lilia ignites her fist with blazing flames, ready to put the plan into motion. A wicked grin spreads across her face as she realizes that overloading the shield with continuous simultaneous attacks is the key to breaking it. Lucius offers a confident smirk in return, casually asking her if she and the rest of the squad are actually capable of pulling it off. Hector smirks back defensively, warning Lucius not to think he's cooperating just to help him out. Noah joins in from under his hood, promising that if sheer numbers of attacks are needed, his magic can easily provide them. Realigning as a unified squad, the 4 elite trainees turn back toward the instructor standing in the clearing ahead. Sensing their shifted aura, the instructor smirks with amusement, eager to see what strategy they've cooked up. With Lilia leading the charge wrapped in fire, all 4 squad members dash forward simultaneously to initiate their coordinated assault. They strike the instructor's barrier from multiple angles at once, pouring physical attacks and magic onto the blue sphere. Noah channels dark tendrils and magic circles to continuously bombard the barrier's surface from different directions. Inside the shield, the instructor chuckles arrogantly, believing that trying to overwhelm him with simple numbers won't be enough. But Hector dives down from the sky above, his red eyes glowing with intense determination as he focuses all his power into his sword. Plunging his blade downward, Hector shouts out as he drives his full weight into the top of the defensive barrier. A brilliant pillar of light erupts as his sword connects, creating a localized shockwave right on the top of the dome. Yelling out the name of his technique, Hector strains against the barrier while calling out to Lilia to follow up. Leaping directly above him, Lilia wraps herself in a torrent of flames and shouts her own skill name as she dives in. The combined force of fire and steel crashes onto the exact same spot with explosive momentum. Stacking her fairy weight directly onto Hector's sword, Lilia helps him drive the blade downward, while the instructor struggles to reinforce the barrier underneath. Under the combined pressure of all their simultaneous strikes, a visible crack finally spiderwebs across the instructor's defensive shield. The instructor looks at the crack on his barrier, admitting that was their best effort yet before preparing to retaliate. Gathering a fresh wave of blue magical energy between his hands, he condescendingly remarks that it's too bad for them. Both Lilia and Hector hit their absolute physical limits, straining with every last drop of strength to keep pushing down. Noah collapses from exhaustion in the rear while Lilia and Hector fall to their knees, completely drained of power. Just as the strike begins to fade, Lucius leaps in and grabs hold of Hector's sword hilt alongside them. With his yellow eyes burning with fierce determination, Lucius declares that this fight isn't over just yet. Channeling his own magic directly through the blade, Lucius injects a massive burst of energy into their combined attack. Re-energized by Lucius's magic, Lilia and Hector scream at the top of their lungs and put everything into one final push. Flame battle aura and blue mana fuse together around the hilt of the sword, creating an unprecedented wave of force. Driven by 3 top rankers simultaneously, the tip of the blade shatters straight through the instructor's barrier. A pillar of light shoots into the sky as the instructor's eyes widen in sheer shock at their sudden breakthrough. The defensive barrier detonates into countless sparkling shards as the explosive shockwave blows everyone backward. As the smoke clears, the 4 students land back on the grass while the instructor stands at the center of the field. Hector and Lilia skid across the ground, heavily out of breath from channeling every ounce of their remaining energy. Touching the small bleeding cut on his cheek, the instructor looks at them with an impressed smirk and declares that they pass. Hearing those words, Hector grins and Lilia lets out a victorious smile, thrilled that their plan actually worked. No lets out a sigh of relief before immediately collapsing face first onto the grass, completely out of energy. Hector and Lilia fall to their hands and knees as well, entirely spent after going all out in that final strike. Catching her breath, Lilia demands they thank her firepower, while Hector mockingly offers to make her his subordinate. Lilia instantly snaps and yells at him, but Hector casually ignores her rage while the instructor begins walking away. Lucius stands silently behind his squabbling teammates, staring intently down at his hands in deep thought. He carefully analyzes the sensation from that final moment, fascinated by what just happened when their powers merged. He remembers the exact instant their strike broke the shield, realizing something incredible occurred during that impact. He notes how his magic seamlessly fused with Hector's sword, transforming raw magical power into a sharp physical blade. Remembering legends of the Academy's founder, Lucius wonders if fusing magic and swordsmanship could be done by one person. A dark, ambitious smile spreads across his face as he contemplates the power he could unlock if he mastered that form. While Lilia and Hector continue arguing loudly behind him, Lucius remains completely engrossed in his own thoughts. Turning back one last time, the instructor reminds them that they officially passed the trial. He explains that the true goal of the exercise was teaching them teamwork, praising them for finally getting the hang of it. Surrounding himself in dark wispy flames, he advises them never to forget the synergy they tapped into today. With a wave of his hand, the instructor vanishes into thin air, leaving the four exhausted students alone in the clearing. Lucius continues staring at his palm, obsessed with the feeling of combining swordsmanship and magic into a single strike. A sinister grin forms on his face as he realizes mastering this hybrid art will give him the ultimate weapon for his true goal. Later on, the scene shifts to the grand interior of the Royal Academy Library filled with massive bookshelves. Perched high up on a wooden ladder, Lucius sits alone, buried deep in an ancient research tome. The book in his hands is titled Basic Spiritual Energy Theory, detailing the core fundamentals of power in this world. He reads that transmuted spiritual energy flows through special internal circuits within a person's body. It explains that this energy converts into either magic power for mages or battle energy for trained swordsmen. The text notes that people are normally born with only one type of circuit, pointing to why mages and swordsmen are separate. Lucius reflects on how his earlier attack only worked by stacking his magic onto Hector's physical battle aura. Flipping to the next page, he searches for any record of someone attempting to wield both energies simultaneously. He discovers a passage stating that rare individuals possess both circuits, and the Academy founder used both to fuse sword and magic. Lucius's eyes light up with pure excitement as he confirms that his theory is not only possible, but historically proven. Stepping outside to the training grounds later, Lucius unsheathes a practice sword to test the theory himself. He recalls trying to force the fusion on his own, attempting to channel magic directly into his own blade. Though his initial solo attempt ended in failure, Lucius noticed something extremely promising during the trial. Looking down at the sparking blade, he realized the feedback felt identical to the battle energy circuit from his past life. He concludes that the high-level battle energy circuit he fully mastered in his previous life might still lie dormant inside him. A confident smirk spreads across his face as he realizes awakening that old circuit alongside his current magic will grant him the founder's power. Meanwhile, high above the academy grounds, a mysterious figure leaps acrobatically through the air toward the gathered students below. Floating high above the crowd with a megaphone, Instructor Miss Kathy excitedly introduces herself to the gathered students, announcing a special exercise specifically for teams ranked 30th to 100th among the Academy's 500 total students. She joyfully reveals that today's event is a high-class inter-class match, instantly drawing the attention of all the participating students waiting below. Standing nearby, some of the higher-ranked upperclassmen notice our squad and mockingly point out that they are dealing with a bunch of freshmen. As Miss Kathy encourages everyone to do their absolute best to raise their rankings, several intimidating students cast sinister, threatening glares toward the crowd. Noticing the hostile gazes around them, our MC quietly observes the surrounding teams and realizes that these opponents are all ranked higher than his squad. The higher-ranked students chuckle condescendingly as they look down on our protagonist team, clearly considering them easy prey. Unable to tolerate their arrogant laughter, our fiery redhead teammate snaps in anger and furiously demands that they stop glaring at her. She aggressively confronts the hostile group, standing her ground with her fists clenched as tension quickly rises between the teams. While she continues to growl in frustration, our silver-haired teammate remains composed right beside her, keeping a careful watch on the surrounding enemies. In her fit of rage, the redhead girl accidentally bumps headfirst into a massive, burly student standing right in her path. She immediately spins around ready to shout at him, but the gentle giant nervously raises his hands and apologizes, explaining that his enormous build made it hard to see her. Completely caught off guard by his sheer size and polite apology, the redhead stands stunned while the giant's tiny companion politely bows to apologize for his friend. Interrupting the commotion, Miss Kathy announces through her megaphone that the match is actually very simple, explaining that a spiritual orb has been placed deep inside the hollow of a giant tree at the center of the mangrove. She reveals a glowing tree in the distance and declares that whichever team manages to secure the orb first will claim complete victory. Hearing the objective, our MC narrows his eyes and quietly repeats the phrase spiritual orb to himself. Miss Kathy further explains that a spiritual orb is a crystal of condensed, high-purity spiritual energy capable of dramatically boosting a person's base energy when absorbed. The surrounding students immediately burst into excitement, realizing that absorbing such an item could allow them to skip years of grueling training in a single moment. Upon hearing this crucial detail, a dark, confident smirk instantly spreads across our MC's face. He realizes that this is the exact opportunity he has been waiting for to significantly boost his strength. Our protagonist knows that channeling such massive, high-purity energy could awaken the dormant battle energy circuit from his past life, while Ms. Kathy adds that combat is fully allowed until sunset. Hearing that fighting is encouraged, the rival teams exchange wicked grins as they prepare to target anyone in their path. Unfazed by the surrounding threat, our MC and his teammates lock in with serious, focused expressions, completely prepared for whatever comes next. With a loud cry, Ms. Kathy fires a brilliant firework flare into the sky, officially signaling the start of the chaotic match as students sprint forward. Our protagonist team immediately dashes together into the dense forest, making their way toward the center of the main grove. However, it doesn't take long before two enemy students suddenly leap out from the trees, rushing straight toward our squad at top speed. The two attackers wear smug, confident smiles, eager to eliminate the freshman team right at the start. Leaping from above with their weapons drawn, the upperclassmen shout out a mockery as they launch a surprise aerial attack. Recognizing their aggressive aura, the silver-haired teammate grimaces, realizing these attackers belong to one of the higher-ranked teams. The enemy pair plunges downward with a spear and dagger, shouting at our MC to drop dead right where he stands. Without showing a hint of panic, our MC steps forward and releases a sudden surge of powerful lightning, instantly shocking both attackers in mid-air. The two enemies crash heavily onto the ground, knocked cold, leaving the silver-haired boy and redhead girl completely dumbfounded by how effortlessly the MC took them out. Turning back to his stunned squad, our MC calmly reminds them not to be fooled by official rankings after everything they've been through. With glowing yellow eyes, our hero firmly assures his teammates that their squad is genuinely strong. Inspired by his absolute composure, both the redhead girl and the silver-haired boy regain their determination and steel their resolve. Suddenly, a taunting voice echoes through the trees, asking who exactly claims to be strong as another group of enemies surrounds them. A wild-looking enemy student with glowing green eyes smirks arrogantly, declaring that their real fight is only just beginning. Hearing his words, the silver-haired teammate turns around with a grim glare, questioning what the opponent means by a real fight. The upperclassmen activate their magic, boldly announcing that they are conducting a proper rookie hunt to steal our team's ranking. The green-eyed opponent laughs maniacally as he gathers a massive sphere of crackling green energy right between his hands. He unleashes a devastating beam of concentrated magic directly toward our silver-haired teammate. As the massive blast surges toward him, the silver-haired boy grips his weapon with intense focus and grit. In a fraction of a second, he draws his blade and performs a rapid red slash, slicing clean through the green energy beam and neutralizing it completely. Shocked that his powerful spell was destroyed so easily, the green-eyed attacker stammers back in disbelief. Glaring fiercely with red glowing eyes, the silver-haired teammate proves that their squad is far from easy pickings. Meanwhile, two massive broadsword-wielding opponents leap down from above, shouting at the redhead girl not to get ahead of herself. The heavy-hitting duo brings down their massive blades simultaneously, aiming a lethal crushing blow directly at her. Refusing to back down, the redhead girl grits her teeth and unleashes her fierce, predatory aura. Intense flame erupts around her arms as she prepares to absorb the incoming attack head-on. With blazing fire swirling around her fists, she stands her ground as the two heavy warriors crash down upon her position. She catches both massive swords with a violent clash of fire and sparks, completely stopping the brutal assault in its tracks. Gritting her teeth as flames swirl around her, the redhead girl snaps in irritation, refusing to let the enemy upperclassmen overpower her. The two heavy attackers look on in sheer terror as her scorching flames completely consume the impact of their massive swords. Concentrating her fiery aura into her right hand, she ignites a terrifying fist of pure blazing energy. Shouting at the upperclassmen never to underestimate them, she unleashes an explosive fire punch that blasts both giant opponents flying backward. Glancing back over her shoulder with glowing yellow eyes, she watches the two heavy hitters crash helplessly into the distance. Nearby, an enemy mage unleashes a massive barrage of sharp ice shards from a floating spell circle, screaming at our squad to die. Before the attack can hit, our silver-haired teammate slashes through the incoming ice with his red blade aura while reminding everyone of their strength. Watching the ice shatter into dust, our squad's hooded teammate sits inside a dark purple magic circle, touched by the fact that the MC included everyone in the team. Determined to prove their own worth, the hooded member unleashes a wave of dark magic spikes, shouting that they are part of this powerful squad too. A violent surge of dark energy shatters the remaining ice spells, completely overwhelming the enemy mage in a burst of light. The last standing enemy heavy hitter crashes face first into the dirt, completely defeated by our team's coordinated counterattack. Seeing all the attackers down, the hooded teammate mutters in relief while the redhead girl gives an approving smirk. Standing over the fallen upperclassman, our MC calmly asks if the fight is finally over. His three teammates look back at him in awe, shocked by how quickly and effortlessly they wiped out several high-ranked teams. Surrounded by the unconscious bodies of their opponents, our MC turns toward the forest and tells his squad it is time to move forward. Meanwhile, back at the observation site, instructor Miss Kathy watches the match through floating magic bubbles, noting that the top 5 teams dropped out within minutes. She stares into her crystal sphere in disbelief, realizing that a team of freshmen was responsible for taking down the academy's top contenders. Observing the orb images of the redhead, silver-haired, and hooded students, Kathy acknowledges their impressive individual strength. However, her focus quickly shifts directly on our blonde protagonist as she narrows her eyes in deep curiosity. Watching past moments in her magical bubbles, she realizes he raised his team's morale with a single sentence and handled top upperclassmen all on his own. Staring intently at his image inside the glowing sphere, Kathy flashes a creepy smile and wonders who this mysterious student truly is. That student is Lucius Elminster, our protagonist, who now leads his squad at full speed deeper into the mangrove forest. High above in the tree branches, a hidden scout watches Lucius's team through binoculars as they approach the center. Through the lenses, the central clearing comes into view, where the glowing spiritual orb sits inside a massive, ancient tree surrounded by lurking guards. Lucius and his teammates charge down the dirt path as the sun begins to set over the dense forest canopy. The silver-haired boy calls out that they are almost there, while Lucius warns everyone to stay alert since rival teams are closing in right behind them. Finally breaking through the thickets, the squad stops before the gigantic mangrove tree, radiating a brilliant green light. Deep inside the hollow of the massive trunk, the high-purity spiritual orb shines like a bright star. Seeing the prize right before their eyes, the silver-haired boy and redhead girl prepare to rush forward to grab it. Suddenly, Lucius's sharp yellow eyes widen as he senses a terrifying presence lurking right in front of them. He instantly throws out his arms and shouts for his entire team to stop in their tracks. The redhead girl angrily complains that other teams will beat them to it, but Lucius strictly orders her to shut up and listen. A heavy, ominous pressure suddenly reverberates through the air, sending violent vibrations across the ground. The massive mangrove tree violently trembles as a dark, sinister aura erupts around its trunk. Sensing the overwhelming bloodlust, the silver-haired teammate breaks into a cold sweat as the aura grows stronger. The hooded member steps back in alarm as dark purple energy begins consuming the entire clearing. Suddenly, a giant shadowy maw with razor-sharp teeth bursts out from beneath the glowing spiritual orb. A colossal, terrifying shadow beast erupts from the hollow of the tree, roaring menacingly over all the advancing students below. The rival teams rushing from behind freeze in utter horror as the giant monster blocks the path to the objective. Standing at the front of his squad, Lucius glares fearlessly at the massive creature, keeping his composure intact. Back at the monitoring area, an official panics as he points at the crystal ball, frantically yelling for Instructor Kathy. The terrified official demands that they call off the exam and request immediate reinforcements to handle the threat. Instead of panicking, Miss Kathy casually stretches her arms and hums with complete indifference. With a sadistic smirk, she refuses to stop the match, leaving the official screaming in disbelief at her insane decision. Stepping forward in her high heels, Kathy nonchalantly argues that unexpected dangerous situations happen all the time. When the official shouts that her attitude is ridiculous, her expression turns cold and shadowed as she makes a grim statement. Both academy officials stand completely paralyzed, trembling into the dark, crushing pressure radiating from her. Looking back over her shoulder, Kathy coldly states that anyone who dies here wouldn't survive on a real battlefield anyway. The official sweats profusely, struggling to find any words to counter her ruthless logic. Suddenly, Kathy turns around with a cheerful smile and winks, giggling that she was just kidding and completely baffling the panicked staff. Miss Kathy smirks confidently, telling the panicked staff that if things truly get out of hand, they can leave everything to her. Hearing her reassuring words, the academy officials sigh in relief as the sun finishes setting over the horizon. However, Kathy keeps a smirk on her face while secretly suspecting that no wild magical beasts should be appearing in this area. Narrowing her sharp golden eyes, she quietly realizes in her thoughts that something about this situation is deeply wrong. Back in the forest, several student teams combine their attacks and slash viciously at the gigantic shadow fish monster. A dark-haired swordsman leaps forward alongside another student, bringing his katana down with a lightning-infused strike. However, their swords spark violently against the beast's hide, doing absolutely no damage and bouncing right off. The swordsman gasps in horror as he realizes the monster's thick scales are being constantly reinforced by the spiritual orb. Refusing to give up, our hooded teammate and several other students unleash a barrage of magic blasts at the creature. A massive explosion erupts right against the beast's body, enveloping the entire area in a blinding burst of light. As the thick smoke begins to clear, the surrounding students anxiously wait to see the results of their combined assault. To their utter horror, the massive purple fish beast floats completely unharmed, its red eyes glowing menacingly through the mist. A nearby student stammers in complete disbelief, realizing that their full power attacks didn't even leave a single scratch on it. The monster splashes its giant tail into the water, driving the surrounding students into total panic as they scream in confusion. Bursting out of the water with immense force, the giant beast surges directly toward the terrified crowd of students. Opening its massive maw filled with razor-sharp teeth, the monster prepares to swallow the fleeing students whole. While everyone else runs for their lives, Lucius suddenly leaps high into the air, flying straight toward the beast's gaping mouth. Watching him jump directly into danger, the surrounding students scream in disbelief, convinced that he has completely lost his mind. Under the bright moonlight, Lucius dives directly inside the dark, open throat of the monstrous creature. Seeing him get swallowed whole, the redhead girl loses her composure and screams Lucius's name in sheer panic. The silver-haired boy and redhead girl watch from below in horror as the giant jaws snap shut around their leader. However, deep inside the pitch-black throat of the beast, Lucius maintains a calm, sinister smirk without a trace of fear. Suddenly, the giant monster loses all power and goes completely limp, plummeting downward out of the sky. The redhead girl and silver-haired boy stare in utter disbelief as the massive creature tumbles toward the water. The beast crashes back into the lake with a huge splash, lying completely motionless as the surrounding students watch. Nearby upperclassmen sneer mockingly, assuming Lucius had a death wish and claiming this is why they hate reckless freshmen. But before anyone can celebrate, brilliant green energy suddenly begins bursting out from inside the monster's body. A student points up in total shock, calling out for everyone to look at the unbelievable sight unfolding before them. A violent internal explosion blasts the giant fish beast completely out of the water, launching its massive body high in the night sky. The students panic as they realize that if a creature that massive crashes back down, the resulting tsunami will wipe out the entire area. Before it can fall, an explosive surge of high-purity spiritual energy erupts from within, shattering the beast from the inside out. A blinding shockwave illuminates the entire forest sky as the giant monster is completely vaporized into glittering light. The silver-haired boy, redhead girl, and hooded teammates stare upward with wide eyes, completely stunned by the incredible spectacle. The arrogant upperclassmen stand frozen in place, their mouths agape as they realize what just happened. Floating gracefully in the center of the radiant light high above, Lucius descends slowly back down like an untouchable god. Trembling in disbelief, the rival students ask themselves how a single freshman could blow apart a giant beast from the inside. Lucius lands smoothly on his feet, holding the brilliant green spiritual orb safely in his hand with a triumphant smirk. Staring at the high-purity energy crystal resting in his palm, Lucius quietly celebrates securing his ultimate prize. As he steps forward onto the ground, a wave of radiant green spiritual energy pulses outward from the orb. The redhead girl and silver-haired boy look on in awe as the soothing green light washes over the entire battlefield. Holding up the glowing orb for everyone to see, Lucius flashes a confident smile that leaves no doubt about his victory. Floating overhead, instructor Miss Kathy speaks through her megaphone, officially declaring that the exercise has come to an end. Lucius looks up toward Ms. Kathy while holding his prize with his proud teammate standing firmly by his side. Miss Kathy smiles devilishly through her megaphone as she instructs all the participating students to head back to the academy. Her golden eyes glisten with intense fascination as she keeps her gaze fixed directly on our brilliant protagonist. Lucius stands tall with the glowing orb in hand, surrounded by his teammates who now look at him with complete respect. Frustrated and humiliated, the rival upperclassmen grit their teeth in defeat, unable to accept being outshone by freshmen. With the spiritual orb illuminating their path, Lucius leads his victorious squad back through the misty forest. The redhead girl boasts arrogantly about how easy the match was, while the silver-haired boy casually wishes for a tougher opponent. The dark, hooded teammate chuckles softly under his breath, and the squad walks together in triumph, ready for whatever challenges await them next. As the squad walks back, the redhead girl glares suspiciously at our protagonist, unable to shake off her doubts. The silver-haired boy and hooded member watch from behind as Lucius walks ahead, holding the glowing green orb. Looking intently at Lucius's back, the redhead girl quietly asks herself who this guy really is. Meanwhile, Lucius remains completely focused on the high-purity spiritual orb resting in his hands. He admires the item in silence, confirming to himself that this is indeed a genuine spiritual energy orb. Sensing the magical aura radiating from it, he notes that the spiritual energy contained inside is amazingly dense. Lucius realizes that absorbing this concentrated power might finally allow him to awaken his fighting spirit circuit. Suddenly, a suspicious rustling noise echoes from the nearby bushes, forcing the entire squad to stop. The tall, ponytail-haired student from this morning steps out from the shadows, praising the team for their strength. He and his fat partner pretend to be helpless, claiming they were too terrified to move during the monster attack. Smiling warmly, the tall student insists that he was deeply impressed by their performance as first-year students. Lucius turns his head slightly, keeping a cold and vigilant eye on the overly friendly upperclassmen. The tall student flatters the rest of the squad, showering the redhead girl and silver-haired boy with praise. He extends his hand toward the redhead, offering to be friends and promising to help them navigate the academy. The redhead girl stares at his offered glove, hesitating briefly before letting her guard down. Flattered by his compliments, she smiles cheerfully and decides to accept his gesture of friendship. She reaches out her hand to shake his, completely unaware of the malicious trap being set for her. The tall student's expression instantly changes as a dark, sinister smirk spreads across his face. Before she can react, he brutally strikes her right in the torso with a devastating, heavy palm hit. The redhead girl gasps in agonizing shock, coughing violently as the immense pressure crushes her breath. With an explosive release of wind pressure, the attacker launches her backward, sending her flying through the air. The silver-haired boy and hooded teammate gasp in horror, completely stunned by the sudden, cowardly betrayal. Spitting blood, the redhead girl loses consciousness before her body even hits the ground. In a split second, Lucius dashes forward and catches his falling teammate, glaring coldly at the attackers. Holding her limp body gently, Lucius warns the upperclassmen with glowing yellow eyes that the match is over. Surrounded by his sinister squad, the tall attacker chuckles maniacally, calling our team magnificent prey. Narrowing his glowing eyes, he repeats how truly impressive our protagonist and his squad are. He reaches out his hand toward them, revealing that his group came here specifically to hunt down top targets. Furious at the cowardly sneak attack, the silver-haired teammate draws his sword and prepares for a deadly fight. The lead attacker sneers darkly, asking the freshmen if they have ever heard of the group known as Swampers. The hostile group surrounds our squad in the dark forest, radiating an overwhelming aura of malice. Trembling slightly under their cloak, the dark hooded member mutters the strange term Swampers in confusion. The lead Swamper explains the Academy's cruel rule, stating that only the bottom 125 students get expelled each year. He reveals that by avoiding the bottom ranks without ever graduating, older students can remain enrolled at the school indefinitely. A dark image shows hopeless students trapped at the bottom, growing older while chained to the Academy forever. Their faces warp into terrifying demonic grins as he declares that hopeless repeaters like them are called Swampers. Remaining completely calm, Lucius stares them down and flatly demands to know what these Swampers are after. The lead Swamper looks up at the moon, bitterly confessing how they aged into useless middle rankers over the years. He admits with deep anger that they have even lost the right to carry their own family names due to their failure. The silver-haired teammate mocks them, calling them nothing more than washed up old men clinging desperately to the Academy. Enraged by the truth, the lead Swamper grabs his face and screams hysterically that they have lost everything. Digging his fingers into his skin with unhinged eyes, he vows to reclaim his lost honor by any means necessary. An enormous, glowing purple hourglass manifests behind them as he roars that they will stop at nothing to win. The silver-haired teammate gasps in utter disgust upon seeing the horrific contents inside the giant hourglass artifact. Dozens of human skulls and skeletal remains float inside the dark purple liquid, horrifying our entire team. Recognizing the extreme danger, the hooded member immediately activates a dark magical circle under their feet. A massive surge of dark magic erupts across the battlefield as the Swampers prepare to unleash their cursed artifact. The heavy Swamper twists his mouth into a grotesque, greedy smile, anticipating the slaughter of our squad. Raising their arms to the hourglass, the Swampers launch a wave of dark, tendril-like curses directly at our heroes. Standing beside the hooded mage, the silver-haired teammate braces himself for an all-out battle against the desperate Swampers. Raising their arms, the Swamper leaders channel dark purple energy to activate their cursed hourglass artifact. Swirling purple magic gathers between their hands, feeding directly into the sinister spell circle. The lead Swamper tilts his head back, watching in delight as the artifact begins draining the surrounding spiritual energy. Both villains laugh hysterically in sheer ecstasy, reveling in the massive rush of stolen power filling their jar. Drooling with a repulsive grin, the fat Swamper vows to completely drain our squad until they die. Shouting for everyone to stay back, our hooded teammate throws out their hands to cast a protective, shadowy barrier. The fat Swamper cackles maniacally as purple flames swirl around his body, thoroughly enjoying the surge of cursed energy. Ignoring the danger, our silver-haired teammate charges past the hooded mage, heading straight for the enemy artifact. The giant hourglass glows with a blinding purple light, radiating a terrifying aura of dark magic across the clearing. Narrowing his sharp red eyes, the silver-haired swordsman locks his focus directly onto the glowing jar. Leaping high into the air, he brings his blade down with full force, aiming to smash the artifact in a single blow. He executes a rapid horizontal red slash right across the middle of the glowing glass container. However, his strike passes clean through the hourglass like a phantom, leaving the cursed artifact completely undamaged. Gasps of shock escape the silver-haired boy as he realizes his full power slash failed to affect the jar at all. Before he can recover, the fat Swamper catches him in midair, grabbing his neck in a brutal chokehold. Smirking nastily, the fat Swamper reveals that only those who activated the jar can physically touch or destroy it. Seeing his ally in grave danger, Lucius instantly lunges forward, bursting through the night air at incredible speed. With a cold, calculated expression, our protagonist analyzes the enemy's defensive trick in a fraction of a second. Lucius recalls that while the jar easily absorbs magical attacks and drains anyone who touches the villains' bodies, the opponent relies entirely on magical absorption to neutralize incoming spells and siphon away life force. Analyzing their weakness, Lucius quietly decides to switch strategies and abandon magic altogether. Flying above the battlefield, he positions himself directly over the fat Swamper, holding his teammate hostage. Lucius delivers a brutal, pure physical flying kick directly into the fat Swamper's face with crushing force. The sheer physical impact shatters the villain's grip, sending the heavy attacker flying into the ground while releasing the silver-haired boy. A massive dust cloud erupts as the fat Swamper violently crashes onto the earth below. Landing smoothly on his feet, Lucius smirks, confirming that pure physical strikes bypass the magical absorption completely. As dust billows around the fallen villain, the lead Swamper stammers back in utter shock at Lucius's raw strength. Walking past his kneeling teammate, Lucius calmly reaches down and picks up the silver-haired boy's dropped sword. Panting on the ground, the silver-haired teammate looks up at Lucius in total confusion. He asks Lucius what he intends to do with a blade, reminding him that he is supposed to be a mage. Firmly gripping the hilt of the sword, Lucius coldly replies that he isn't just a magic user. He raises the blade with flawless, practiced precision, adopting a stance that commands immediate respect. A dark, terrifying smile spreads across Lucius's face as his eyes flash with intense killing intent. Watching him handle the weapon, the remaining Swampers break into a cold sweat, sensing a drastic shift in the air. Lucius reveals his true past, declaring that before anything else, he originally trained as a master swordsman. A demonic red glow flares from his right eye as he prepares to show the upperclassmen true swordplay. Violent gusts of wind swirl around Lucius as he settles into an expert high-level combat stance. With glowing golden eyes and a menacing grin, our MC prepares to unleash his ultimate physical technique. The lead swamper and his fat partner stare in disbelief, unable to take a mage holding a sword seriously. The fat swamper mockingly sneers, belittling Lucius for trying to play pretend as a swordsman. Laughing arrogantly, the fat swamper charges forward, boasting that he will snap Lucius's sword in half. In the blink of an eye, Lucius vanishes from sight and unleashes a blinding flurry of high-speed sword slashes. The heavy swamper gasps in agony as Lucius's blade slices effortlessly through his body, leaving a trail of blood. The lead swamper barely manages to raise his arm to guard, trembling in horror as sparks fly off his defense. Glaring with cold, lethal precision, Lucius switches his movement without losing a single frame of momentum. He adjusts his grip instantly, completely bypassing the lead swamper's desperate attempt to block. Ducking beneath the villain's guard, Lucius executes a flawless, lightning-fast rising slash. A massive arc of glowing energy and blood erupts through the air as Lucius delivers a devastating lethal combo. The lead swamper collapses helplessly to the ground, while the redhead teammate watches the spectacle from afar in total awe. The redhead girl stammers with wide, disbelieving eyes, completely unable to comprehend the sheer scale of Lucius's true power. Standing calmly amidst the swirling dust, our protagonist glares back with sharp, composed eyes, completely unaffected by the tense atmosphere. With a single, effortless motion, he stands atop his defeated opponent, keeping his blade drawn as if this fierce fight were just a casual warm-up. The silver-haired knight lies on the ground in utter disbelief, unable to process how someone could execute such high-level sword techniques without using mana or fighting spirit. Staring in shock, the fallen enemy desperately tries to comprehend how a mere child could possibly possess such incredible physical skill. Seeing the boy move with terrifying speed, the bald villain guarding the giant hourglass shrieks in panic as our MC instantly closes the distance. Realizing he is in immediate danger, the coward frantically backs away against his artifact, desperately shouting at the boy to calm down. Trying to regain his nerve, the villain reminds himself that since the boy isn't channeling any fighting spirit, he's still just a powerless 12-year-old brat. Grasping onto that comforting thought, a wicked smirk returns to his face as he attempts to regain his composure. He reaches back to touch the glowing container, intending to tap directly the massive amount of stolen spiritual energy stored inside. Demanding that the boy tremble in fear, he forcibly activates the device and pumps the raw, stolen power directly into his own body. Surrounded by a dark aura, his muscles swell immensely as he prepares to crush our protagonist with overwhelming physical strength. Our MC immediately slashes forward, but his sword blade bounces cleanly off the villain's rock-hard, empowered chest without leaving a scratch. The brute laughs mockingly, boasting that no weapon wielded without spiritual energy could ever hope to pierce his hardened body. Flexing his massive form, he brags that this absolute defense comes directly from all the spiritual energy they managed to steal. Charging forward like an unstoppable wrecking ball, the villain lunges at our hero while the young boy quickly prepares to dodge. A high-speed clash erupts as our MC relies on his superior reaction time to deflect and parry a violent storm of heavy strikes. A massive glowing fist grazes past his face, missing him by a hair's breadth thanks to his incredible reflexes. Despite his flawless technique, the sheer physical weight behind each blow forces the young swordsman onto the defensive. Feeling the immense pressure of the onslaught, our MC quickly assesses that dragging this direct head-on fight out isn't going to end well. He nimbly slides out of range just as another devastating punch tears through the empty air where he stood. Blocking another heavy palm strike with his blade, the sheer shockwave pushes the young boy backward across the dirt. Feeling his sword vibrate from the impact, he grimly realized that his physical strikes simply lacked the destructive power needed to break through. Forced to deflect a relentless barrage of attacks, his smaller body struggles against the brute force of his empowered opponent. He remembers that in his previous life, an opponent like this would be as fragile as paper, but his current 12-year-old body clearly has its limits. Caught in a tight spot, he barely manages to withstand another heavy strike that threatens to break his defensive stance. Frustrated by the boy's endless dodging, the brute screams in rage and pours even more force into his wild assault. Enraged that a kid is managing to survive his attacks, he unleashes a furious punch intended to crush the boy once and for all. Our MC skids backward across the clearing to create distance, while his allies watch the intense battle in horror from afar. Seeing him push back, the red-haired girl and her companion scream out in terror, desperately worrying that he might lose. Catching his balance, our protagonist drops into a low crouch, remaining completely composed despite the villain's continuous taunts. Laughing maniacally, the brute approaches arrogantly, mocking the kid by admitting his swordsmanship was impressive but ultimate useless. Smirking down at him, the villain sneers that without fighting spirit, the boy's attacks are no more dangerous than a baby throwing a tantrum. Completely ignoring the taunts, our MC calmly pulls out a glowing green orb of spiritual energy and drops it onto the ground before him. As the sphere glows softly, he clutches his chest, feeling a sudden, heavy pulse echoing deep within his heart. Sensing the green aura swirl, he realizes that the dormant fighting spirit circuit from his past life is finally responding to the energy. Reaching toward the vibrant green orb, a sharp glint enters his eyes as he prepares to execute a risky maneuver. Confident in his invulnerability, the villain surges with dark power, preparing to deal the final lethal blow. Holding the spiritual energy orb close, our protagonist recalls the exact technique needed to forcibly channel the raw power into his own body. He grips the glowing sphere tightly, beginning to squeeze and break down the concentrated energy within his hands. Weaves of brilliant green aura burst outward, swirling violently around him like a blooming lotus of raw power. The spiritual energy condenses into a blazing core, releasing a sharp surge of force that reverberates through the entire area. With a heavy pulse, the green energy forcibly injects itself straight into his chest, targeting his blocked internal pathways. Tilting his head back, he accepts the massive flow of energy, letting the raw power ignite his internal body structure. Closing his eyes for a brief second, he feels the barriers holding back his true potential crumble under the immense pressure. Raw spiritual energy violently surges inside him, forcibly tearing open the dormant spirit circuits of his body. Snapping his eyes open, they flare with an intense, glowing orange light that radiates pure, suffocating killer aura. Gripping his shirt over his beating heart, a cold, confident smirk appears on his face as he feels the transformation complete. With the towering silhouette of his past self manifesting behind him, he reveals that the fighting spirit circuit in his body has finally reawakened. Sensing the sudden, terrifying shift in the atmosphere, the brute's arrogant grin instantly vanishes, replaced by cold sweat and sheer horror. As the ground shakes under his newfound power, our MC inwardly notes that he had to forcibly tear the circuit open using the spiritual energy orb, setting the stage for what comes next. Gripping his sword hilt tightly, our MC notes that with his current limited energy, his awakened fighting spirit will likely only last for a single strike. Sensing the dramatic shift in pressure, the bald brute breaks into a terrified sweat as sheer dread washes over him. A massive column of fiery red aura erupts around our protagonist, making it clear to everyone that he intends to finish the battle in one blow. Paralyzed by the suffocating killing intent, the villain can only stare in horror as cold sweat rolls down his face. With a dark shadow over his glowing eyes, our hero smirks, confident that single strike finishes happen to be his absolute specialty. Desperate to survive, the bald brute turns around and frantically runs toward his giant hourglass artifact. Screaming in pure panic, he desperately warns himself that taking a direct hit from that monster aura would mean instant death. But before he can even take another step, our MC zips across the battlefield like a red lightning strike. In a single breathtaking flash, he delivers a massive red slash that cuts straight through both the brute and his artifact. Landing smoothly on the other side, our MC sheathes his weapon as the cut villain collapses into a cloud of dust behind him. As the dust settles, the fiery red fighting spirit around his shoulders slowly fades away. Dropping to his knees in exhaustion, our protagonist catches his breath, realizing that one strike really was his absolute limit. Sweat dripping down his face, he feels the temporary power he absorbed from the orb completely draining out of his body. Even though his energy is spent, he takes solace in the fact that the spirit circuit itself has finally been unlocked. Looking down at his blade, he admits that his circuit is still incomplete and requires a spiritual energy orb to channel power for now. Despite the limitation, a subtle, satisfied smile appears on his lips. Kneeling with his sword in hand, our MC realizes that he finally has a clear path forward to regain his former strength. Seeing the fight finally end, Noah rushes over in relief, shouting Lucius's name as he runs to his side. As Noah kneels beside him, Lilia steps forward and stares at our protagonist in complete shock. Speechless from what she just witnessed, Lilia can only wonder in awe what kind of insane power he just displayed. Under the full moonlight, the team stands together in the quiet forest, processing the incredible victory they just achieved. Checking on his physical condition, Noah asks if he's alright, to which Lucius calmly replies that he is fine. Meanwhile, Hector stands nearby, staring intensely at Lucius before quietly calling out his name. Looking at our hero from a distance, Hector can't hide his suspicion after seeing such high-level combat. He points out that the way Lucius handles a sword is the distinct skill of someone who has spent decades mastering the blade. Glaring with glowing red eyes, Hector aggressively demands to know who could have possibly taught him such masterous-level swordsmanship. Without pressing further, Hector turns around and slowly walks away down the moonlit path. As he passes by, the two exchange a silent, heavy glance in the night air. Watching him walk off, our MC simply smirks to himself, keeping his secret past comfortably hidden. Sometime later back at the academy, the group walks through the grand marble hallway, with Lilia excitedly pointing out that their rankings went up significantly. Noah agrees, happily adding that on top of their rank increase, everyone successfully secured their spiritual energy orbs. Turning around with a playful poos, rank 26 Lilia Magner teases Noah that she won't be losing to him anytime soon. Smirking under his hood, rank 29 Noah Raven replies that he'll let her hold the higher spot just for now. Walking alongside them in silence, rank 25 Hector Arclight remains quiet as usual. Glancing sideways with an annoyed expression, Hector continues brooding over the mysterious power he witnessed earlier. While Lilia playfully nudges Noah, our protagonist walks ahead, focusing entirely on his next move. Currently holding rank 19, Lucius Elminster reflects on how the practical exercise successfully opened his fighting spirit circuit. Recalling his powerful final slash, he realizes that his current energy reserves aren't large enough to activate the circuit on his own. To overcome this hurdle, he knows he urgently needs a massive boost to his permanent spiritual energy reserves. Arriving at the central hall, they find a crowd of students gathered around a giant notice posted on the wall. The massive gilded banner announces the upcoming 27th Imperial Gambling Tournament. Looking up the board, Lilia curiously asks what the huge event is all about. Reading the title aloud, Noah wonders what Imperial Gambling Tournament entails. Suddenly, an elegant female hand touches Lucius's chin, prompting a cheerful response while Noah panics in the background. Hanging completely upside down from the ceiling, an energetic maid asks if they're interested, startling Lilia no. Smiling mischievously, the maid commends them for their impressive performance yesterday, teasingly thanking them for taking care of those old geezers for her. Unfazed by her dramatic entrance, our MC glares up calmly and asks if that's all she wanted to say. Flipping gracefully through the air, the playful maid landing near the balcony teases that they must be curious about the tournament rules. Holding a megaphone, she explains that it's a massive combat tournament sponsored by the Empire where confident fighters gather from all over the realm. Listening nearby, a green-haired student cynically notes that the tournament is essentially a freak show where wealthy nobles bet money on bloodthirsty fighters. Hearing the announcement, a nearby student's sweat drops in worry, mentioning the dark rumor that participants die in this tournament every year. Floating down gracefully from above, the playful maid casually confirms that the dangerous rumor is actually mostly true. Leaning in uncomfortably close to the nervous student, she points a finger and adds that there is a crucial detail people tend to miss. She explains that the tournament arena possesses a unique structure designed to trap and accumulate all the spiritual energy released during combat. As fighters clash on stage, anyone standing within the ring naturally absorbs the concentrated energy radiating around them. Consequently, as the matches progress, the sheer density of spiritual energy filling the arena continually rises. Spreading her arms wide, she reveals that the longer a fighter stays on stage, the more their baseline spiritual energy reserves will be boosted. Hearing those words, Lucius's eyes widen in instant realization while Lilia watches him in utter confusion. Charming the crowd, the maid adds that since it's an unofficial off-campus event that won't harm their school rankings, it's a great chance for students to test their skills. Uninterested in an event that offers no academic rank, the surrounding students dismiss the tournament as a sketchy risk and decide to walk away. Ignoring the grumbling crowd, our hero fixes his mind on the fact that spiritual energy naturally concentrates on that stage. A confident smirk spreads across his face as he realizes that winning every match will grant him the massive energy boost he desperately needs. Turning toward the floating maid, Lucius abruptly calls out to catch her attention. Surprised by his sudden call, the maid pauses in mid-air and looks down at him. Without wasting a second, our MC demands to know where to submit his entry form, causing Lilia to scream in disbelief behind him. Delighted by his choice, the maid cheerfully offers to handle his registration process personally. Leaning down close to him with a playful smile, she whispers an extra piece of secret information while Lilia fumes in the background. She reveals that elite students ranked 4th, 10th, and 15th in the academy are also participating in this tournament. Floating away with a playful wave, she enthusiastically wishes him the best of luck in the upcoming fights. Left standing in the hallway, our hero flashes a cold, confident smile, completely unbothered by the high-ranking competition. A short time later, the scene shifts to the magnificent arena as the eccentric announcer welcomes the roaring crowd to the gambling tournament. Taking center stage with his microphone, the flashy host hypes up the audience, explaining that spectators can bet whatever they want on their favorite fighters. As wealthy nobles cheer from the stands, he explains that a fighter's betting odds decrease as they advance, making early bets the most profitable. Grinning wildly through his dark glasses, he urges the audience to place their bets early if they want to hit the massive jackpot. Up in the noble balconies, arrogant spectators mock the event, dismissing the Academy's 12-year-old representative as a useless sideshow. Meanwhile, Lucius stands at the edge of the dark tunnel, quietly gazing out at the grand stage before him. Stepping into the arena, he instantly senses that every fighter gathered here radiates an extraordinary amount of spiritual energy. Looking around at the formidable opponents glowing with intense auras, our MC carefully measures the competition. Glancing through the crowd, he notes that the top 3 Academy representatives ranked 15th and above haven't made their appearance yet. Raising his hands dramatically, the host shouts through his mic to announce the very first match of the tournament. Massive holographic screens project the matchup, displaying a huge muscular brute named Guards against our young protagonist. Pointing out the comical difference in physique, the host formally introduces Lucius Elminster as the representative of the Royal Academy. On the opposing side, he presents Garzas, the fierce representative selected from the elite Northern Escort Corps. Watching from the spectator box, Lilia reacts with shock, recognizing the Northern Escort Corps as one of the Empire's top elite military units. Hector calmly confirms her observation, acknowledging her surprisingly sharp knowledge of the Empire's power structure. Meanwhile, greedy nobles chuckle in delight, considering this unbalanced matchup an easy opportunity to make free money. Throwing gold coins into the air, the announcer hypes up the crowd and declares that the fight is about to begin. Muscle-bound fighters in the crowd laugh mockingly, pitying the young boy for having to face a brutal veteran warrior. As the two fighters face off in the ring, the host explains that the pillars will collect their spiritual energy to signal the official start. Holding a massive battle axe over his shoulder, Garzas flashes a bloodthirsty grin as the announcer asks if both combatants are ready. Standing on the opposite side, our MC remains completely composed, staring forward with cold, unyielding yellow eyes. Raising a glowing green gavel high into the air, the energetic host prepares to officially launch the battle. Slamming the gavel down with a loud crack, he roars through the microphone for the fight to begin. Instantly, Garzas lunges forward like a red blur, swinging his massive axe with murderous intent right at the young boy. Watching from the upper balcony, Lily yells out in shock, taken aback by the warrior's terrifying initial speed. Bringing his giant axe down with all his force, Garzas roars for the kid to die right where he stands. Unfazed by the incoming fatal blow, a shadow falls over Lucius's face as he casually analyzes his opponent's weapon choice. Raising a single finger, our protagonist effortlessly generates a concentrated blue barrier, stopping the massive axe dead in its tracks. Shocked beyond belief, Garza's eyes widen in sheer horror as a mere child completely negates his full power strike. Without giving him time to react, Lucius unleashes a devastating blast of kinetic force from his fingertip, sending the hulking warrior flying across the arena. Blasted backward by the sudden burst of kinetic energy, Garza screams out in shock as he flies across the arena. Surrounded by a swirling blue aura, our MC stands perfectly still with his finger outstretched, completely dominating the match. Lowering his hand, a subtle smirk appears on his face, showing just how easy that first victory was for him. The hulking warrior crashes face first onto the marble floor, knocked out cold in a single effortless move. Spectators in the noble stands lean over the railing in complete disbelief, unable to process what they just witnessed. Even the flashy announcer breaks into a cold sweat behind his sunglasses, completely speechless from the sudden turn of events. Grabbing his microphone, the host shouts in amazement, declaring Lucius Elminster as the official winner of the first match. Outraged gamblers scream in agony throughout the stadium, realizing they just lost millions of zenny by betting against the kid. Raising his hand before the floating screen, the announcer hypes up the crowd, celebrating the incredible one-strike upset by the young super rookie. Up in the balcony, Lilia bites the desk railing in comical rage for worrying, while the playful maid cheers excitedly with pums in the background. As a dense vortex of green spiritual energy swirls around our hero, the announcer frantically wonders who this mystery boy really is. Clenching his fist on stage, Lucius inwardly notes that the accumulated energy is still not enough to properly activate his fighting spirit circuit. In the second match against Bolunder Gillen, our protagonist effortlessly lands another single hit blow to dispatch his opponent. The announcer roars into his microphone, hyping up the crowd as the young boy delivers another insane one-hit knockout. Panicked nobles scramble to change their bets, frantically throwing all their money onto the unstoppable 12-year-old. Entering his third match, our hero effortlessly strikes down his next opponent without giving them a single chance to react. Posing dramatically on stage, the host announces an incredible 3-match-winning streak for the young Academy representative. As gold coins rain down from the stands, the announcer proclaims that the 12-year-old dark horse, Lucius Elminster, is completely unstoppable. Meanwhile, in the spectator box, the maid hysterically cheers with stacks of money in her hands while an annoyed Lilia shouts at her to shut up. Watching from the sidelines, Hector clenches his jaw in intense jealousy and rage, biting his lip until blood trickles down his chin. Still standing in the center of the ring, our MC absorbs the flowing green aura, knowing he needs far more energy to reach his goal. Suddenly, a heavy, suffocating pressure erupts from the royal VIP balcony above the stadium, rattling the entire building. Sensing the terrifying aura, Lucius immediately snaps his head up, his yellow eyes widening as he gazes toward the upper level. A dark, imposing silhouette emerges from the shadows of the VIP entrance, radiating a chilling bloodlust across the arena. Dark purple shockwaves surge throughout the entire stadium, overpowering the atmosphere and silencing the roaring audience. Sweating profusely, the announcer panics behind his glasses, having no idea that a super VIP of this magnitude would personally attend the event. Looking down from the high balcony, the mysterious figure gazes directly at our protagonist standing alone on the vast arena floor. Feeling the familiar pressure from above, a dark shadow falls over Lucius's face as he stares back up at the intruder. Stepping onto the balcony edge with a heavy thud, the figure's red cape flutters in the dense, suffocating aura. Deep in the VIP box, a hand clenches into a tight fist, squeezing so hard that blood drips down from the palm. Looking straight up at the grand balcony under the chandelier, our hero meets the gaze of the terrifying intruder. The looming figure is revealed to be a stern old man with long white hair, a flowing white beard, and glowing red eyes filled with malice. Glaring up at the balcony, Lucius's expression turns deadly serious, his yellow eyes burning with intense killer intent. The mysterious powerhouse standing above the arena is none other than the legendary figure known as Atlas. As their eyes lock in a silent clash of pressure, an intense feud between the young prodigy and the ancient power begins.